Welcome, weary traveller, to a serene sanctuary built of stone and starlight, resting high above the Aegean Sea. Close your eyes, let go of the relentless, noisy demands, and allow your breathing to slow to the gentle, rhythmic cadence of the ocean tide lapping against ancient cliffs far below. You are safe here, enveloped in the quietude of the 14th century. Tonight we journey to the sacred peninsula of Mount Athos in the year 1340. There is no urgency here, no ticking clocks to chase, only the infinite expanse of a sapphire night sky waiting to be read like a grand celestial manuscript. Feel the weight of your shoulders sinking, melting into the softness of your bed as the cool breeze scented with pine from the Mediterranean night drifts through your open window, carrying the faint, sweet aroma of melting beeswax and aged parchment. We are ascending the winding steps draped in moss toward an isolated lunar observatory, a quiet beacon of knowledge perched on the edge of the world. The monks who dwell within these heavy arched walls have long since retired to their humble cells, leaving the observatory bathed in the soft silver tranquil glow of a waxing moon. Take a deep restorative breath in, filling your lungs with the pristine cool mountain air, and exhale slowly, releasing every lingering thought. Surrender to the stillness, and let the gentle currents of history carry you away into a realm of profound peace, ancient wisdom, and uninterrupted restorative sleep. Before we continue our quiet ascent into the starlit heavens of the Byzantine Empire, I invite you to join our growing fellowship of nocturnal historians. If you find comfort in these whispered tales of forgotten eras, please consider subscribing to our channel and gently pressing the bell icon. By doing so, you ensure that a new sanctuary of history will always be waiting for you when the waking world becomes too heavy to bear. Your support allows us to keep the candles burning in these ancient hidden rooms, guiding you safely through the corridors of time week after week. Think of your subscription as a small, quiet etching of your name in the grand library of our shared past, a simple gesture that helps our peaceful community flourish and thrive. If tonight's journey brings you tranquility, leaving a gentle like or a softly spoken comment below also helps other restless souls discover this quiet haven among the digital noise. But for now, there is nothing more you need to do, nothing more to accomplish, and absolutely nothing to worry about. The stars above Mount Athos have been perfectly aligned for centuries, waiting patiently just for you as the distant choir of nighttime cicadas begins to hum a soothing lullaby. Let us step across the weathered stone threshold of the observatory together. The heavy, solid oak door glides open with a slow, resonant creak, welcoming us into a wondrous world illuminated only by the grace of the endless, beautiful, ancient cosmos. As we step across the weathered stone threshold, the transition from the open nocturnal world to the enclosed sanctuary of the observatory is profound and immediate. The grand entrance is guarded by a massive, ancient door crafted from the heartwood of a centuries-old oak tree, a timber so dense and dark that it seems to have absorbed the shadows of 1,000 silent nights. The surface of this magnificent wooden barrier is not smooth, but rather a complex tactile landscape of deep, swirling grain and natural imperfections polished to a dull, satiny sheen by the countless hands of devout scholars who have passed through this portal over the generations. Run your fingers in your mind's eye along the face of the door, feel the cool, solid, unyielding strength of the wood and the slight ridges where the softer summer growth has worn away, leaving only the hardened winter rings behind. Embedded within the oak are heavy, hand-forged iron studs, their rounded heads dark and pitted with age, spaced in perfect rhythmic intervals that speak of a meticulous, deliberate craftsmanship. The hinges, great bands of dark metal stretching across the width of the timber, are a marvel of Byzantine blacksmithing, engineered so perfectly that despite the immense staggering weight of the door, it moves inward with an incredibly gentle, slow, and sonorous groan. This sound is not a harsh creak, but a low, resonant, almost musical sigh, like the deep, breathy exhalation of a sleeping giant, welcoming us into its quiet embrace. As the door closes slowly behind us, shutting out the murmurs of the wind and the rustling leaves of the Mediterranean pines outside, an encompassing profound silence descends. It is a thick velvet silence, the kind of absolute quietude that wraps around your shoulders like a heavy, comforting woven blanket, shielding you from the chaotic energies of the waking world and inviting your mind to settle into a state of deep, undisturbed peace. Within this immediate enclosure, the air undergoes a subtle, beautiful transformation. The brisk, salty tang of the distant Aegean Sea, which danced upon the breeze outside, is now replaced by an incredibly complex, layered fragrance that tells the silent history of this sacred space. Take a slow, deep breath in, drawing the atmosphere of the 14th century into your lungs. The dominant note is the dry, comforting aroma of aged stone and ancient mortar, a slightly chalky mineral scent that evokes feelings of permanence, stability, and enduring strength. Interwoven with this foundational smell is the faint, lingering sweetness of pure golden beeswax candles, which have burned down to their wicks in quiet corners over countless evenings of scholarly devotion. You can almost smell the memory of the flame, a warm, honeyed ghost that clings affectionately to the heavy masonry. Beneath that, there is the incredibly subtle, crisp scent of old parchment and leather-bound manuscripts, a dusty, papery fragrance that speaks of accumulated wisdom and quiet, solitary study. It is an olfactory tapestry so rich and soothing that it immediately commands your nervous system to relax, signaling to your brain that you have entered a space completely disconnected from modern anxieties. The very essence of the air feels remarkably pure, entirely untainted by the haste or machinery of future ages, offering a deeply grounding connection to the natural world. The temperature here is wonderfully balanced, a gentle ambient coolness that contrasts beautifully with the lingering warmth of the day that might still hum in your own skin. The thick, solid stone walls, constructed of rough-hewn limestone blocks, stacked with painstaking precision, act as a master thermal regulator, holding the cool night air within their porous embrace. You feel a gentle chill, just enough to make the idea of drawing a soft woolen blanket up to your chin feel like the most luxurious, comforting thought in the world, as your breathing continues to match the slow, steady rhythm of this ancient hidden antechamber. Before us lies the means of our ascent, a narrow, gracefully curving spiral staircase built directly into the thickness of the observatory's outer wall. The steps are carved from blocks of pale local granite, their edges softened and rounded by the passage of time. If you look closely at the center of each step, illuminated faintly by the ambient scattered light, you can see a distinct gentle depression. This hollow is the physical manifestation of patience and routine, worn away millimeter by microscopic millimeter by the soft-soled leather sandals of astronomers, philosophers, and monks who have climbed this very path night after night, century after century, to commune with the cosmos. As we begin to ascend, our footsteps are entirely silent, swallowed by the dense architecture and the hushed reverence of the building. The walls curving tightly around us are made of unplastered stone, their uneven surfaces creating a mesmerizing, hypnotic interplay of faint light and deep pooling shadow. Every few paces, a narrow, deeply recessed slit window pierces the thick outer wall, allowing a single concentrated beam of pristine silvery moonlight to slice through the darkness of the stairwell. These beams act as ethereal, glowing stepping stones, guiding our upward journey. When you pass through one of these shafts of light, you can see millions of microscopic dust motes suspended in the air, dancing in a slow, weightless, chaotic ballet. They drift and swirl with an agonizingly beautiful slowness, glittering like tiny, transient stars born within the very atmosphere of the tower. Watching them induces a sense of trance, a gentle hypnosis that washes away any remaining tension in your jaw, your neck, and your back, leaving you feeling lighter with every individual step you take toward the heavens. The ascent is unhurried, a moving meditation that elevates us not just physically but spiritually, lifting us far above the earthly concerns that bind us below. Finally, the tight curve of the staircase gradually unwinds, opening up into the breathtaking expanse of the main observation chamber. As we emerge from the confined, shadowy stairwell, the sheer volume of space in this upper room is awe-inspiring. It is a vast, perfectly circular sanctuary, capped by an astonishingly intricate domed ceiling constructed from overlapping ribs of dark, polished cedar wood. The design of the dome draws the eye upward in a continuous sweeping motion, resembling the inverted hull of a grand celestial ship navigating the ocean of the night sky. The walls of this chamber are lined with tall, elegant arched windows, completely devoid of glass, leaving the room entirely open to the mild, soothing elements of the high-altitude evening. Through these magnificent stone arches, the night pours in, filling the observatory with a luminous, ethereal bath of moonlight. The light does not just illuminate the room, it seems to paint it, casting long, sharp, incredibly detailed shadows across the floorboards. The floor itself is a masterpiece of geometric design, composed of alternating tiles of dark slate and pale marble polished so smoothly that they softly reflect the ambient glow of the moon. As you stand at the edge of this remarkable room, feeling the gentle rhythmic pulse of the night air caressing your face, you notice the absolute stillness of the objects arranged within. There are heavy wooden reading stands, intricately carved astrolabes resting on velvet-draped tables, and beautifully crafted celestial globes of brass and copper, all waiting silently in the dark. You can almost trace the careful, deliberate engravings on the brass rings, depicting constellations of myths and legends long past. They are tools of quiet observation, instruments of peace that require slow, deliberate attention. The sheer tranquility of this space is overwhelming, a profound, heavy serenity that sinks deep into your bones, urging your heavy eyelids to flutter and close, inviting you to surrender entirely to the magnificent, hypnotic quietude of this 14th-century sanctuary. The stars above continue their slow, eternal, silent procession across the deep velvet expanse of the ancient night. Let us move slowly, with deliberate and gentle steps, toward the grand arched windows that line the perimeter of this magnificent circular chamber. The transition from the polished marble and slate floor to the slightly rougher, weather-beaten stone of the balcony threshold offers a grounding, tactile sensation beneath your feet. As you approach the great open archway facing the vast, boundless expanse of the east, a breathtaking panorama unfolds before your heavy, resting eyes. Below, far down the steep, craggy cliffs of Mount Athos, lies the sleeping Aegean Sea. From this towering vantage point, the ocean appears as an endless, undulating blanket of dark midnight silk. The surface of the water is not still, but rather breathes with a slow, rhythmic, hypnotic swell, catching the silver illumination of the moon in a million shimmering, fragmented reflections. These tiny, dancing lights look like a second sky of liquid stars scattered across the deep, bringing the heavens down to the earth in a quiet, mesmerizing display, a magnificent, undulating mirror image of the ancient constellations rotating silently far above. The sound of the sea, having travelled up the immense height of the mountain, is softened into a continuous, soothing whisper, a low white noise that washes over your senses like a gentle rhythmic hum. It is a sound that has echoed against these ancient rocks since the dawn of time, a steady, unyielding lullaby that encourages your breathing to synchronize with the ancient pulse of the tide. You can feel the remarkably cool, pure night breeze flowing through the archway, carrying with it the faintest, refreshing mist of salt water mixed with the aromatic, earthy scent of the rugged mountain thyme that clings stubbornly to the cliffside below. Framing these magnificent open arches are massive, heavy draperies of the deepest, richest midnight blue velvet, designed to be drawn shut against the fiercest winter gales. Tonight, however, they hang open, resting quietly against the pale stone walls. Let your attention drift to the exquisite texture of this fabric. It is a thick, luxurious material, woven with painstaking care, possessing a plush, dense pile that seems to absorb the surrounding shadows, creating pockets of absolute, comforting darkness. Where the moonlight grazes the folds of the heavy curtain, the velvet reveals a soft, almost frosted sheen, a delicate interplay of light and texture that is immensely satisfying to observe. If you were to reach out and brush your fingertips down the length of the cloth, you would feel an unparalleled softness, a gentle resistance from the thousands of microscopic threads that make up its dense surface. Embroidered along the edges of these heavy drapes are intricate, winding patterns of silver thread, depicting stylized phases of the moon and trailing, beautifully rendered constellations. This metallic embroidery catches the ambient light, glimmering faintly like captured starlight, woven directly into the heavy cloth. The base of the curtains pools elegantly onto the stone floor, ending in thick braided tassels made of heavy silk cords. The sheer weight of the fabric ensures it remains perfectly still in the mild breeze, a silent, soft sentinel guarding the perimeter of the observatory. It acts as a magnificent tactile boundary between the wild, untamed nature of the mountain outside and the highly ordered contemplative sanctuary within. This abundance of heavy, sound-absorbing textile contributes to the incredibly hushed acoustics of the room, dampening any stray echoes and wrapping you in an auditory cocoon of pure, unadulterated tranquility. Turning your gaze inward from the balcony toward the center of the vast, starlit room, you will find the primary workspace of the devoted night scholars. It is a substantial, robust desk, masterfully carved from a single, massive piece of aged Anatolian walnut. The wood is exceptionally dark, radiating a deep, warm chocolate hue that speaks of decades of quiet, solitary labor. The surface of this magnificent desk is a testament to the passage of time, polished to a mirror-like finish by the continuous gentle friction of woolen sleeves and resting hands. If you look closely at the magnificent expanse of the desktop, you can trace the complex flowing rivers of the wood grain, a mesmerizing natural topography of swirling lines and tight, fascinating knots that tell the story of the tree's long, silent life before it was transformed into this altar of astronomy. Resting perfectly in the center of the desk is a beautifully bound ledger, its thick wooden covers wrapped in soft, supple goatskin leather that smells faintly of sweet almond oil and old dust. The ledger is open to a blank, inviting page of high-quality vellum. Vellum is not like the paper of modern times. It is a heavy, substantial material with a distinct organic texture. Imagine resting your hand upon it. It feels remarkably smooth yet subtly porous, holding a slight, comforting coolness against your skin. The parchment is a creamy, pale ivory color catching the soft glow of the moon. Beside the ledger rests a finely sharpened goose-feather quill, its pristine white barbs meticulously trimmed, ready to dip into the small, heavy glass inkwell filled with dark, purplish-black oak gall ink. The faint, slightly acidic, earthy scent of the ink mingles perfectly with the aroma of the leather and the walnut, creating an olfactory symphony of scholarly dedication and profound, quiet focus. Beside the open ledger, dominating the right side of the heavy walnut desk, sits the true marvel of this Byzantine sanctuary, a magnificent, intricately crafted brass astrolabe. It is a large, imposing instrument, standing almost 2 feet tall on a beautifully turned, heavy bronze pedestal. This astrolabe is not merely a tool, it is a breathtaking piece of functional art, a metallic map of the heavens brought down to earth. The polished brass gleams warmly in the moonlight, radiating a soft, golden aura that pushes back the surrounding shadows. The instrument consists of several overlapping, perfectly flat, circular plates, each engraved with a level of microscopic precision that defies the imagination. Lean in closer and observe the surface of the primary plate, known as the mater. It is covered in a dense, beautiful geometry of intersecting arcs, concentric circles, and delicate, flowing Greek numerals, all etched into the metal with a master engraver's absolute certainty. Resting above the mater is the rete, an astonishingly intricate, star-shaped framework of cut-out brass. The rete is designed to rotate smoothly over the solid plate beneath it, its gracefully curving metallic tendrils pointing to the positions of the brightest, most prominent stars in the night sky. The edges of the brass are perfectly smooth, filed down and polished so meticulously that they feel like hard, cool silk to the touch. In the very center of the instrument is a sturdy, finely threaded brass pin, holding all the delicate, overlapping layers perfectly in place. The entire apparatus speaks of an era where patience was a supreme virtue, where an artisan might spend months or even years perfecting the tension and balance of a single slow-moving dial. Just looking at the astrolabe, with its circles within circles and its promise of celestial order, induces a feeling of profound harmony and cosmic balance. It reminds us that the universe above is not chaotic, but follows a slow, beautiful, predictable rhythm, a majestic, eternal clockwork that has turned flawlessly for eons before us, and will continue to turn for eons after we have drifted off into a deep, restful, and completely untroubled sleep. Let us slowly pull our gaze away from the brass astrolabe and allow our eyes to drift toward the deep, gently curving alcoves that line the northern wall of this magnificent circular room. Nestled perfectly into the thick protective stone are massive, towering bookcases, reaching almost to the springing point of the dark cedar dome above. These shelves are monumental structures, built not just to temporarily hold knowledge, but to fiercely protect it for centuries to come. They are constructed from the heavy, dense wood of the ancient Mediterranean cypress, a timber renowned for its incredible durability and its exceptionally rich aromatic scent. Take a slow, deep breath in, pulling the cool, calm air of the room deeply into your resting chest. Can you detect it? Beneath the foundational, chalky smell of the stone and the faint, lingering salt of the distant sea, there is a distinct, resinous fragrance. It is a warm, slightly spicy, incredibly grounding aroma of aged cypress wood. This scent naturally repels pests and dampness, but to the weary traveler it acts as a deep, soothing botanical balm, calming the nerves, lowering the heart rate, and inviting a profound sense of physical relaxation. The construction of these shelves is a true marvel of Byzantine joinery. There are no harsh iron nails used here. Instead, the remarkably thick planks are locked firmly together with massive, hand-carved wooden pegs and intricately cut dovetail joints, fitting so perfectly that not a single wandering sliver of moonlight can pass between the incredibly tight seams. The outer edges of the vertical supports have been carefully chamfered and smoothed over centuries of gentle, repetitive use, leaving a softly rounded, highly polished profile that feels incredibly satisfying and remarkably cool to trace with your fingertips. The sheer, overwhelming permanence of these wooden giants is profoundly comforting. They stand completely silent and steadfastly unmoving, a monumental testament to absolute stillness in a world that is so often driven by noise and haste. They hold their precious ancient burdens without a single complaint, their incredibly thick horizontal planks bowing just a microscopic fraction of an inch under the staggering, beautiful weight of accumulated human wisdom. Upon these heavy, steadfast shelves rest endless rows of magnificent, painstakingly bound manuscripts. These are not the lightweight, easily mass-produced books of the modern era. These are substantial, incredibly formidable volumes, each one representing a lifelong labor of absolute devotion and quiet, solitary focus. Imagine reaching out and carefully, respectfully sliding one of these large tomes from its resting place in the shadows. As you support it with both hands, you immediately feel its immense, incredibly satisfying weight. The heavy covers are made of thick, solid wooden boards, wrapped tightly in incredibly soft, deeply tanned calfskin leather. Over the long, silent decades, this leather has aged to a beautiful, highly complex, mottled chestnut brown, a warm, deeply organic color that seems to hold a quiet, inner, glowing warmth even in the dimmest light. Run your hands slowly across the broad surface of the cover. The leather is wonderfully, beautifully supple, yet completely resilient, retaining a subtle, naturally pebbled texture that is immensely pleasing and grounding to the touch. The spine of the heavy book is highly ribbed, featuring thick horizontal bands of raised leather that protect the incredibly intricate, tightly pulled linen sewing of the bindings underneath. Embedded firmly into the four corners of the wooden covers are heavy, highly decorative brass bosses, smooth, beautifully rounded domes of heavy metal, specifically designed to elevate the leather slightly off the reading table, protecting the precious binding from any unnecessary friction or wear. A pair of beautifully engineered, highly functional bronze clasps hold the thick book tightly shut, keeping the delicate, ancient vellum pages within perfectly, seamlessly flat. If you were to gently unhook just one of these cool metal clasps, it would release with an incredibly soft, deeply satisfying, highly resonant metallic snick, a tiny, brief musical sound that echoes for only a fraction of a second in the overwhelming quiet of the room. Opening the heavy, unyielding cover reveals hundreds of pages of thick, heavy, creamy parchment filled with incredibly dense, meticulously hand-copied Greek script, subtly illuminated with brilliant, deep blue lapis lazuli and incredibly thin, shimmering gold leaf that perfectly catches the faint ambient moonlight. The complex scent that immediately rises from the open ancient book is utterly intoxicating, a heavy, dusty, deeply complex blend of dry, cured animal skin, ancient brittle hide glue, and the faint, incredibly sweet memory of the devoted monks who breathed softly over these very pages hundreds of years ago. It is a smell that completely commands absolute, uninterrupted peace, a rare, beautiful fragrance of slow, unhurried, and deeply restorative time. Directly below the towering rows of heavy, tightly bound codices, the lower section of the great cypress bookcase is divided into dozens of small, perfectly square, meticulously organized wooden cubbies, resting horizontally, and safely within these snug, darkened compartments are hundreds of rolled scrolls, the much older, more delicate ancestors of the heavy-bound book. These beautifully crafted scrolls are fashioned from the absolute finest, incredibly thin sheepskin vellum, rolled tightly and smoothly around beautifully turned, perfectly cylindrical wooden rollers called umbilici. The far ends of these smooth wooden rollers are masterfully carved into perfectly smooth, beautifully rounded knobs of polished dark ebony or pale smooth bone, providing a firm, wonderfully cool and deeply satisfying grip for the ancient scholar's resting hands. Each delicate scroll is carefully and lovingly secured with a length of beautifully woven silk ribbon or a thin, incredibly soft and highly flexible leather thong tied in a wonderfully neat, easily released, gentle knot. The rich colors of these wrapping ribbons, though softly faded by centuries of gentle ambient light, still offer a beautifully muted, deeply soothing visual palette of faded dusty crimson, deep shadowing forest green, and pale, incredibly soft indigo. Imagine gently, slowly untying one of these incredibly soft silken ribbons, feeling the incredibly smooth, almost utterly frictionless slide of the ancient fabric between your resting fingers. As the tension releases and the scroll relaxes, it unspools with a wonderfully soft, dry, incredibly soothing papery rustle, a highly delicate, heavily whispering sound exactly like dry, brittle autumn leaves tumbling slowly over soft, damp grass in a gentle evening breeze. The long edges of the ancient sheepskin are slightly, wonderfully brittle and highly, beautifully uneven, a lasting testament to the deeply organic, incredibly handcrafted nature of the precious material. As you look incredibly closely at the unrolled waiting parchment, you can easily see the highly faint, completely translucent patterns of the animal's skin, the tiny, deeply microscopic pores, and the highly subtle natural variations in absolute thickness that make every single solitary inch of the long scroll entirely, beautifully unique. The sheer, overwhelming volume of rolled parchment resting so peacefully in these shadowed cubbies represents countless lifetimes of incredibly patient observation and deeply quiet, uninterrupted thought, stacked safely in the cooling dark, waiting with absolute unwavering patience in the vast, eternal silence of the towering mountain. To navigate this incredibly vast, darkened repository of ancient knowledge in the absolute deepest, most solitary hours of the night, a scholar requires a remarkably gentle, highly steady source of warm illumination. Resting perfectly on a small, beautifully carved, gracefully freestanding wooden pedestal near the towering bookcases is a highly traditional, incredibly functional Byzantine olive oil lamp. It is a stunning masterpiece of profoundly simple, purely functional elegance, perfectly shaped from the deeply local, incredibly iron-rich terracotta clay of the Lower Peninsula. The unglazed, deeply beautiful ceramic has a remarkably warm, highly porous, deeply earthy and rough texture, fired in an ancient kiln to a beautiful, soft, deeply comforting terracotta orange that looks incredibly inviting in the cool, silvery washing moonlight of the grand room. The lamp features a wonderfully wide, remarkably shallow, perfectly saucer-like base, curving gracefully up to form a deep central reservoir completely filled with the absolute purest, highest quality, perfectly cold-pressed olive oil, sourced directly from the ancient, terraced groves on the very lower slopes of the peaceful peninsula. The surface of the heavy golden oil is perfectly remarkably still, a flawless, unbroken pool of highly liquid gold that perfectly mirrors the ambient, soft light with astonishing glass-like clarity, resting exactly at the very edge of the lamp's beautifully elongated, curving nozzle is a remarkably thick, completely hand-twisted wick made from highly unbleached, deeply natural linen fibers. The soft wick draws the heavy golden oil upward with an incredibly slow, completely invisible, utterly, profoundly silent capillary action, steadily feeding a single, perfectly formed, highly luminous teardrop-shaped flame. This little brave flame is incredibly, remarkably calm, completely unwavering in the profound, heavy stillness of the enclosed circular room. It boldly casts a deeply rich, highly saturated, beautifully amber light, a remarkably warm, deeply honey-coloured, incredibly soft glow that completely beautifully changes the very atmosphere of the quiet corner it gently inhabits. The light does not pierce the surrounding darkness aggressively or violently. Rather, it incredibly gently, softly pushes it back, seamlessly creating a wonderfully soft, incredibly inviting, deeply protective sphere of pure warmth that makes your remarkably heavy, deeply tired eyelids want to flutter and close in deep, absolute, and overwhelming comforting satisfaction. As the incredibly pure, heavy olive oil burns so incredibly slowly and remarkably steadily, it naturally releases a remarkably faint, wonderfully, deeply soothing fragrance into the cool night air. It is a wonderfully clean, slightly beautifully grassy, deeply warm botanical scent, completely and utterly devoid of the harsh, highly acrid smoke commonly produced by cheaper tallows or heavy waxes. Watching the tiny, remarkably mesmerizing, deeply hypnotic dance of the soft golden flame, you absolutely feel a profound, incredibly heavy, deeply overwhelming wave of absolute relaxation slowly wash over your entire resting body. The incredibly rhythmic, profoundly silent, slow burning of the gentle lamp is a remarkably perfect, deeply beautiful metaphor for the highly peaceful, completely unhurried passage of time in this incredibly hidden, heavily guarded sanctuary. Slow, remarkably gentle, profoundly warm, and endlessly wonderfully comforting. Let your remarkably heavy mind completely rest right here, deeply bathed in the soft, beautiful amber glow, as the absolute overwhelming peace of the ancient observatory profoundly deepens with every single highly quiet, wonderfully deep breath you take. Let us now gently guide our resting, heavy vision upward, moving away from the warm amber glow of the olive oil lamp and the grounded presence of the towering cypress bookcases. As you tilt your head back in your imagination, allow your neck to completely relax, feeling the soft, supportive embrace of your pillow. Above us stretches the true architectural marvel of this sanctuary, a magnificent, incredibly vast domed ceiling that crowns the circular observatory like a protective celestial vault. This overarching canopy is fashioned from an astonishingly complex, masterful network of interlocking cedar ribs. The wood of the Lebanese cedar is a deep, rich mahogany color, possessing an almost iridescent quality where the faint, wandering fingers of moonlight graze its smooth, highly polished surface. Look closely at how these immense, curving wooden beams have been arranged. They radiate outward from the center of the ceiling in a breathtakingly perfect, beautifully symmetrical geometric pattern, curving downward to meet the incredibly thick stone walls. The visual effect is intensely mesmerizing. It heavily resembles the inverted, perfectly ribbed hull of an absolutely colossal ancient wooden ship, one suspended in the air to navigate the boundless ocean of the eternal night sky. The sheer scale of this wooden masterpiece induces a deep, humbling sense of peace. Because the wood is naturally porous, the acoustics within this domed space are entirely unique. The heavy ceiling acts as an immense, gentle sounding board, catching the faintest noises, the remarkably quiet rustle of a turning vellum page, the highly soft, muffled tread of a leather sandal, and beautifully softening them, diffusing the tiny sounds until they become a comforting, barely perceptible murmur that continuously washes over you, lulling your mind into an even deeper, profoundly tranquil state of absolute rest. Suspended from the absolute, perfectly calculated zenith of this magnificent cedar dome, right at the center point where all the sweeping ribs flawlessly lock together, hangs a spectacular, astonishingly heavy wrought iron chandelier. Tonight, its beautifully curved metal arms remain completely bare of burning candles, resting silently in the dim air, yet its very presence is deeply grounding and remarkably majestic. The massive apparatus is securely held by an incredibly thick iron chain, with each individual deeply elongated link meticulously hand-forged by a skilled Byzantine blacksmith many centuries ago. If you could somehow float upward into the gathering shadows to examine the cold metal up close, you would easily see the innumerable, deeply fascinating indentations left behind by the rhythmic, heavy strikes of the blacksmith's hammer. These tiny, beautifully imperfect, overlapping facets scatter the ambient light, preventing the ancient iron from ever looking entirely flat. The surface of the heavy metal is delightfully cool to the imagined touch, possessing a remarkably deep, slightly oxidized charcoal black hue, speckled with tiny, beautiful blooms of dark, rusty umber where the moist, salty air of the Aegean Sea has incredibly slowly interacted with the iron. The chandelier features 3 distinct, beautifully proportioned tiers of wide, flat, sturdy metal drip pans, originally designed to catch the soft cascades of melting beeswax during the long, incredibly dark nights of the winter solstice. Standing entirely unlit and absolutely motionless, the great iron fixture resembles a slumbering, incredibly peaceful mechanical constellation, quietly guarding the central airspace of the room, completely content to wait in the silent darkness, adding to the overwhelming, profound sense of deep, motionless slumber that permeates the sacred sanctuary. Just below the beautifully curved, springing line of the grand cedar dome, where the magnificent woodwork gracefully meets the exceedingly thick, unyielding limestone walls, lies a wide, continuous, highly mesmerizing band of ancient, beautifully faded frescoes. This circular canvas of heavily plastered wall was once brilliantly painted with exceedingly vibrant, deeply saturated earth pigments, depicting incredibly intricate, breathtakingly detailed maps of the known heavens, lovingly intertwined with wonderfully serene figures of celestial angels guiding the slow paths of the wandering planets. Now, gracefully aged by the incredibly slow, completely inevitable passage of hundreds of years, the once bright colors have beautifully softened into a remarkably muted, immensely soothing pastel palette that is incredibly pleasing to the tired eye. The vivid lapis lazuli blues of the painted night skies have gently transformed into a soft, hazy, incredibly dusty slate color. The bright ochres and deep malachite greens have beautifully mellowed into pale, whispering shadows of their former glory. If you lean in closely to observe the incredibly delicate texture of the ancient painted wall, you will see that the surface of the dry plaster has developed an incredibly intricate, breathtakingly beautiful network of microscopic fissures. This highly delicate, perfectly natural web of fine, wandering lines closely resembles the beautiful, parched, intensely geometric mosaic of a sun-baked riverbed, or the incredibly fragile veins traversing the surface of a dry autumn leaf. When the beautifully warm, incredibly soft amber light from the solitary olive oil lamp occasionally flickers across this heavily textured surface, it creates tiny, incredibly beautiful, rapidly shifting micro-shadows within the tiny cracks. This incredibly subtle interplay of soft light and complex texture gives the ancient, silent figures painted on the wall a wonderfully faint illusion of incredibly slow, deep breathing. Watching these highly peaceful, faded celestial guardians seem to respire in the dim, cooling shadows is a profoundly hypnotic experience. A deeply beautiful visual lullaby that gently encourages your own breathing to match their ancient, completely untroubled rhythm. Finally, let us allow our completely relaxed, profoundly heavy gaze to drift downward, slowly descending past the towering shelves and the heavy velvet curtains, until our attention comes to rest on the magnificent, intensely solid foundation of the observatory, the impeccably laid, deeply beautifully geometric floor. The expansive circular surface of the room is completely covered in alternating, perfectly cut tiles of incredibly dark, wonderfully rich slate and amazingly pale, deeply luminous marble. The highly striking, beautiful contrast between the two deeply natural stones creates an intensely mesmerizing, highly organized visual checkerboard that effortlessly anchors the vast space. The pale marble tiles are incredibly dense and beautifully polished, featuring remarkably faint, completely natural wandering veins of soft, dusty grey and exceedingly pale pink that trace entirely unpredictable, highly organic pathways through the stone. In wonderful contrast, the dark, heavy slate tiles offer a completely matte, remarkably velvety visual texture, perfectly absorbing the ambient moonlight rather than cleanly reflecting it. If you were to slip off your shoes and slowly walk barefoot across this magnificent ancient surface, you would immediately feel an incredibly pleasant, deeply refreshing, and highly grounding coolness seeping instantly from the chilled stone directly into the soles of your resting feet. You would also feel the remarkably subtle, highly pleasing tactile transitions between the perfectly flat, incredibly smooth marble and the slightly cleft, beautifully naturally layered surface of the dark slate. Running perfectly between every single one of these beautiful heavy tiles are incredibly thin, deeply precise lines of ancient, highly hardened mortar. Over the silent centuries, these narrow grooves have slowly accumulated incredibly microscopic amounts of fine, sweet-smelling dust, tiny crumbles of remarkably soft beeswax, and the faint residue of crushed cypress needles. This highly complex mosaic of interlocking stone perfectly represents the incredibly solid, profoundly unwavering foundation of this hidden sanctuary, providing an absolutely perfect, completely safe resting place for your intensely tired mind to gently settle upon as the deeply beautiful night continues its silent progression. As we complete our slow circular observation of this magnificent stone sanctuary, our attention is drawn to a quiet, persistent sound that has been thrumming beneath the silence of the room like a gentle liquid heartbeat. Tucked into a shadowed niche between two of the towering cypress bookcases stands an exquisite, highly sophisticated clepsydra, or ancient water clock. This remarkable device, a masterpiece of Byzantine engineering and hydraulic art, provides a steady, rhythmic cadence to the passage of the night. It consists of two large, beautifully proportioned vessels made of highly polished, incredibly heavy translucent green glass, held securely within a tall, slender frame of dark, oil-rubbed bronze. The upper vessel is filled to the brim with incredibly clear, perfectly still mountain spring water, which slowly and meticulously drips through a microscopic precision-drilled aperture in its base. Watch, in your mind's eye, as a single, perfect globule of water forms at the tip of the bronze nozzle. It hangs there for a long, suspended moment, swelling into a heavy, glistening diamond of liquid, catching the faint amber glow of the olive oil lamp. Then, with a soft, silver grace, it detaches and falls, plummeting through the cool air to strike the surface of the water in the lower vessel with a crystalline, melodic plink. This sound is incredibly pure, a delicate, watery note that resonates softly against the stone walls, marking the seconds not with the harsh, mechanical ticking of a metal spring, but with the fluid, organic pulse of gravity itself. The rhythmic repetition is profoundly hypnotic, a steady, predictable anchor in the vast ocean of the night. As the lower vessel slowly fills, a tiny, intricately carved cork float, topped with a slender silver needle, rises with agonizing slowness against a vertical scale of etched brass, indicating the passage of the hours. The sight and sound of this liquid timekeeping are deeply sedating, encouraging your own internal rhythm to slow down, to flow with the same effortless, unhurried grace as the mountain water drifting toward a state of absolute fluid tranquility. Near the base of the water clock, resting on a low, heavy side table covered in a thick cloth of deep forest green linen, is a collection of smaller, more delicate instruments of observation. These are the personal tools of the master astronomer, objects handled with immense care and profound reverence. Among them lies a small, beautifully balanced set of bronze dividers, their points needle-sharp yet perfectly aligned, held together by a single decorative rivet shaped like a blooming lotus. Beside the dividers rests a handheld sighting tube, a slender cylinder of dark hammered copper used for isolating specific stars in the dense tapestry of the Milky Way. The surface of the copper is not smooth, it bears the incredibly fine, overlapping texture of thousands of tiny hammer blows, giving the metal a remarkably warm, organic feel that is immensely pleasing to hold. There is also a small rectangular tray made of pale aromatic sandalwood containing several smooth, flat lenses of polished rock crystal. These crystals are not perfectly clear like modern glass, but possess a soft, cloudy inner life, with tiny microscopic inclusions that catch the moonlight and diffuse it into a gentle, milky radiance. If you were to pick up one of these cool, heavy crystals, its weight would feel incredibly grounding in the palm of your hand, a solid piece of the Earth's frozen light. The scent of the sandalwood tray rises in the still air, a dry, sweet, and incredibly creamy perfume that mingles perfectly with the resinous cypress and the earthy olive oil. These small, silent objects represent a lifetime of patient, meticulous looking, a dedication to the small details of the universe that mirrors our own slow journey into the microscopic details of this room. The presence of these tools resting so quietly in their designated places reinforces the sense of order and purpose that permeates this sanctuary, assuring you that everything in this world is exactly where it belongs and everything is at peace. In the center of this quiet constellation of instruments and ancient books, positioned perfectly to capture the best view of the eastern horizon through the arched windows, is the scholar's primary place of rest and reflection, a large, high-backed armchair crafted from solid blackened oak. This chair is a monument to comfort and endurance, its wide, flat armrests polished to a glass-like finish by decades of resting elbows and contemplative palms. The wood is exceptionally dark, almost the color of a moonless sky, and it possesses a deep, inner solidity that seems to absorb any tension from anyone who sits within its embrace. The seat and the tall back are generously padded and upholstered in a thick, hand-woven fabric made of the softest, unbleached mountain sheep's wool. The texture of the wool is remarkably rich and tactile, a dense, creamy landscape of tiny, springy fibers that offer a gentle, supportive resistance. Draped over the back of the chair is a heavy, incredibly plush fleece from a caracal sheep, its long, silky locks of wool swirling in beautiful, chaotic patterns of charcoal and silver. Imagine sinking slowly into this chair, feeling the immense, sturdy frame of the oak supporting your weight, while the soft, voluminous fleece wraps around your shoulders like a warm, thick cloud. The wool holds a faint, clean scent of the high pastures, a smell of sun-dried grass and cold mountain air that is instantly comforting and deeply nostalgic. As you settle into the deep cushion, the fabric gives way with a soft, muffled sound conforming perfectly to the shape of your body, cradling your spine and allowing every single muscle in your legs, your hips, and your core to completely surrender their hold. This chair is a sanctuary within a sanctuary, a private harbour where the mind can let go of its analytical duties and simply exist in the present moment, surrounded by the protective walls of the mountain. As you sit in this imagined perfect comfort, your gaze falls upon the small decorative details of the chair's woodwork. The ends of the armrests are carved into the likeness of sleeping lions, their manes flowing in stylized, symmetrical waves of dark oak, their eyes closed in a state of eternal wooden slumber. The legs of the chair are sturdy and square, tapering slightly toward the floor where they rest firmly on the pale marble tiles. Between the legs are cross braces of turned wood, featuring a rhythmic pattern of rings and beads that catch the low amber light of the olive oil lamp, creating a series of soft, glowing highlights against the deep shadows of the floor. There is a profound sense of stillness emanating from this piece of furniture, a quiet invitation to remain motionless, to breathe deeply and to observe the slow dance of the night without any desire to move or intervene. The chair doesn't just hold your body, it holds the very essence of the observatory's peace, acting as a grounding point for your consciousness as it begins to drift further away from the physical world. The combination of the solid, unyielding oak and the soft, yielding wool creates a perfect sensory balance, a harmony of hard and soft that mirrors the balance of the stars above and the earth below. Surrounded by the rhythmic plinking of the water clock, the scent of sandalwood and cypress, and the gentle, cool pressure of the night breeze, you feel yourself becoming a part of the room's ancient, silent history. The boundaries between your resting body and the comfortable chair seem to blur and soften, leaving you suspended in a state of pure, weightless existence. The entire world outside, the distant wars of the 14th century, the political intrigues of the Byzantine court, the struggles of daily life has completely vanished, replaced by the absolute overwhelming tranquility of this single starlit room on the holy mountain. You prepare to descend even deeper into the soothing habits and traditions of the peaceful night. Within the profound velvet stillness of the 14th-century observatory, the scholar begins a series of quiet, deliberate movements that have remained unchanged for decades. This is the ritual of preparation, a slow transition from the physical world into the contemplative realm of the stars. Let us observe the meticulous care with which he approaches a small, beautifully wrought iron brazier resting in a corner of the room. The brazier, standing on three slender, curving legs, holds a small bed of glowing charcoal embers buried deep beneath a layer of fine, silvery grey ash. With a small, hand-forged brass shovel, the scholar gently stirs the embers, a movement so slow and careful that it produces only the faintest, softest metallic rasp against the iron. As the ash is moved aside, a warm, deep orange glow emerges, casting a flickering, cosy light onto the surrounding stone floor. There is no haste in his hands, only a rhythmic, meditative grace. He places a small globular kettle made of heavy, unglazed red clay directly onto the iron grate. The clay is thick and rustic, possessing a wonderfully rough, organic texture that is deeply grounding to the touch. As the kettle begins to absorb the steady heat of the embers, the water within, drawn earlier from a cold, crystalline mountain spring, begins to wake. You can hear it first as a tiny, almost imperceptible hum, a microscopic vibration of molecules that gradually swells into a soft, steady, and incredibly soothing simmer. This is not the violent, whistling boil of a modern kitchen, but a gentle, ancient murmur, the sound of heat meeting water in a timeless elemental dance. While the water warms, the scholar turns his attention to a small rectangular chest made of fragrant cedar wood, kept on a low shelf near the brazier. He lifts the lid with a slow, reverent motion, revealing several small, hand-stitched linen pouches, each containing dried herbs gathered from the rugged, sun-drenched slopes of Mount Athos during the height of summer. As he opens the first pouch, a concentrated burst of botanical fragrance fills the cool air of the observatory. It is the scent of wild mountain tea, or cydaritis, a hardy plant with soft silver-green leaves and small, pale yellow flowers. The aroma is complex and deeply comforting, sweetly herbal with distinct notes of citrus and earth, carrying the very essence of the high, clean mountain air. He takes a small handful of the dried stalks, feeling their brittle, papery texture between his thumb and forefinger. They crackle with a tiny, sharp sound like the snapping of microscopic twigs, releasing even more of their trapped essential oils. He adds a few sprigs of dried lemon balm and a single small piece of wild honeycomb, still waxy and smelling of 1,000 mountain blossoms. The preparation of these herbs is a sensory feast, a micro-meditation on the bounty of the earth. He places the herbs into a wide-mouthed ceramic cup, a vessel of simple, sturdy beauty, decorated with a single hand-painted band of cobalt blue. The cup feels substantial and heavy, its surface slightly uneven from the potter's wheel, providing a tactile connection to the human hands that shaped it. The moment the water reaches its perfect simmering temperature, the scholar lifts the clay kettle using a thick, folded square of heavy dark wool to protect his hand. He pours the water into the ceramic cup in a slow, steady stream. The sound of the pouring water changes as the cup fills, rising in pitch from a deep, hollow splash to a bright, clear chime. As the hot liquid hits the dried herbs, a cloud of fragrant steam rises, swirling upward in the cool moonlight. Watch the steam as it drifts, a pale, ghostly ribbon of white that curls and undulates in the still air before slowly dissipating into the shadows. The scholar covers the cup with a small, flat wooden lid to allow the infusion to steep, a process that requires nothing but patient waiting. During these few minutes of absolute stillness, he sits quietly in his oak chair, his hands resting flat on his knees, his eyes closed, allowing the aroma of the mountain tea to envelop him. This is a moment of pure, undistracted existence, where the only thing that matters is the slow, invisible alchemy happening within the ceramic cup. The scent of the tea acts as a bridge between the wild, untamed mountain outside and the structured, intellectual sanctuary within, grounding his spirit and preparing his mind for the immense cosmic scale of the work ahead. Once the tea has steeped to a deep, golden amber hue, the scholar removes the wooden lid and takes his first slow sip. The warmth of the ceramic cup transfers immediately into his palms, a deep, penetrating heat that radiates up his arms and into his chest, melting away any lingering physical tension. The tea itself is mild and soothing, the sweetness of the honeycomb perfectly balancing the earthy, slightly bitter notes of the wild herbs. As he drinks, he feels a sense of profound internal quietude, as if the very liquid is washing away the complexities of the day and replacing them with a singular focused clarity. This is the transition point, the moment where the scholar leaves the world of men and enters the world of the stars. He sets the half-empty cup down on the walnut desk, where it will continue to radiate a gentle herbal warmth for the next hour. The steam continues to rise in a thin, tenuous thread, a silent companion to his solitary vigil. The ritual is complete, and the air in the room now carries a new layer of sensory richness, the smell of mountain tea, the warmth of the brazier, and the soft liquid sound of a satisfied exhale. With his body warmed and his mind stilled, the scholar now prepares his physical tools for the night's observations. He reaches for a small, shallow tray of dark, polished basalt used for mixing his ink. Even this simple task is performed with an agonizingly beautiful slowness. He takes a solid stick of compressed soot and pine resin, a traditional ink stick, and begins to grind it against the stone surface of the tray, adding a few drops of water from a small silver vial. The sound is a rhythmic, hypnotic scritch-scratch, a dry mineral friction that is strangely satisfying to hear in the absolute silence of the room. As he moves the inkstick in slow, concentric circles, a pool of deep, lustrous black liquid begins to form. The ink has a faint, resinous scent, a sharp contrast to the sweet herbs of the tea. He tests the consistency with the tip of his quill, watching as the dark liquid clings to the feather's barb in a perfect trembling bead. Every movement is a choice, every gesture a testament to the beauty of a life lived with intention. He lays out his measuring rulers, his compasses, and his star charts with the same careful precision, ensuring that everything is within reach and perfectly aligned with the moonlight. The observatory is now fully alive, not with noise or activity, but with a vibrant, expectant stillness. The scholar is ready, the stars are waiting, and the deep, restorative peace of the 14th-century night has reached its perfect, shimmering peak. Your own mind, following these slow and purposeful actions, feels increasingly heavy and serene, drifting naturally toward a state of profound, uninterrupted slumber as the golden tea cools and the silver moon climbs ever higher into the velvet sky. With the warmth of the mountain tea still radiating through his chest and the ink perfectly prepared, the scholar now turns his entire presence toward the central instrument of the room, the great armillary sphere that stands like a skeletal ghost of the universe in the very heart of the observatory. This instrument is a complex, multi-layered assembly of concentric brass rings, each representing a different celestial pathway, the ecliptic, the celestial equator, and the intricate orbits of the wandering planets known to the medieval mind. As the scholar approaches the device, his movements are so incredibly slow and deliberate that he seems to blend into the very shadows of the room. He reaches out a single steady hand to touch the outermost ring of the sphere. The brass is remarkably cool, possessing a smooth, hard surface that feels like frozen liquid under his sensitive fingertips. There is a profound tactile intimacy in this contact. The metal has been chilled by the night air, yet it carries the faint, lingering energy of all the hands that have guided it before. He begins to rotate the instrument, and the sound it produces is one of the most soothing, hypnotic noises in the entire sanctuary. It is a low, metallic hum, a vibration that travels through the wooden floor and into the soles of his feet, accompanied by the incredibly faint, rhythmic clicking of finely cut gears deep within the bronze pedestal. This sound is not mechanical in a harsh sense. It is a fluid, ancient melody of precision, a soft, sliding friction of metal against metal that has been lubricated with the finest, clearest almond oil. The scholar's eyes, now fully adjusted to the silver-drenched darkness, track the slow movement of a single sighting tube attached to the inner rings. He is searching for a specific star, a distant, unwavering beacon that serves as the anchor for tonight's calculations. As he adjusts the various dials, we focus on the microscopic details of the adjustment process. His thumb and forefinger grip a small knurled brass screw, its surface covered in a tiny diamond-shaped cross-hatching for grip. He turns it a fraction of a millimeter at a time. With each infinitesimal turn, the entire metallic universe of the sphere shifts with a microscopic, barely perceptible grace. The light of the moon catches the edges of the rotating rings, creating a dancing lattice of shadows that sweeps slowly across the marble floor like the hands of a grand, silent clock. You can see the tiny etched graduations on the brass plates, lines so fine they seem to have been drawn with a single hair. The scholar leans in closer, his breath a faint, rhythmic puff of white mist in the cool air, never once disturbing the absolute stillness of the instrument. The concentration required for this task is a form of deep meditation, a narrowing of the entire world down to a single point of light and a single perfectly aligned line of brass. As the star finally enters the center of the sighting tube, a profound sense of cosmic alignment settles over the room. The scholar holds his position, remaining perfectly motionless for several long minutes. In this state of absolute stasis, the boundaries of the self begin to dissolve into the vastness of the surrounding night. He is no longer just a man in a stone tower. He is a silent witness to the eternal choreography of the heavens. The only movement in the room is the slow, almost invisible drift of the moonbeams as they track across the wall, and the steady liquid plink of the water clock in the corner. We focus on the texture of his robe during this stillness, a heavy, coarse woven habit of dark indigo wool. The fabric is thick and protective, its surface a complex terrain of tiny, tangled fibers that catch the ambient light in a soft, fuzzy halo. The weight of the garment is grounding, its slight roughness against his skin, a reminder of his physical presence in this ethereal, starlit space. This contrast between the immense, cold distance of the stars and the warm, tactile reality of the wool is deeply comforting, creating a sensory equilibrium that encourages the mind to let go of all its earthly burdens and simply exist in the present, beautiful moment. After the observation is recorded, the scholar moves back to the walnut desk to transcribe his findings into the great ledger. The act of writing in the 14th century is a slow, tactile art form. He dips the tip of his goose-feather quill into the pool of dark, resinous ink, and for a moment he simply watches as the liquid is drawn up into the hollow shaft of the feather. When the nib touches the creamy surface of the vellum, the ink flows with a beautiful, controlled fluidity. The sound of the quill on the parchment is a soft, dry whispering, a rhythmic shh that sounds like a gentle wind moving through dry grass. The letters he forms are intricate and beautiful, a series of flowing curves and sharp, precise angles that capture the celestial data in a permanent physical form. As the ink dries, it transforms from a wet, glistening black to a deep, matted charcoal, sinking into the fibers of the sheepskin vellum. The smell of the fresh ink, sharp, metallic, and slightly earthy, mingles with the lingering scent of the mountain tea and the dry, ancient aroma of the books. This layering of scents is like a history of the night itself, a sensory map of the hours spent in quiet devotion. The scholar pauses his writing to look out through the central archway. The moon has climbed higher now, its light becoming more intense and silvery. The shadows in the room have shifted, growing longer and more dramatic. He notices a small silver-grey moth that has drifted in from the night, attracted perhaps by the faint warm glow of the olive oil lamp. The moth moves with an erratic, weightless grace, its wings appearing like tiny translucent flakes of mica. It eventually settles on the edge of a heavy, leather-bound volume, its wings vibrating almost imperceptibly. The scholar watches the moth with the same intensity he applied to the stars, recognizing in its tiny, fragile life the same universal patterns of movement and light. The presence of this small creature adds a layer of delicate, living texture to the monumental stone and metal of the observatory. It is a reminder that even in this place of grand, eternal truths, the smallest details are worthy of observation and care. The moth's stillness mirrors his own, and for a long, beautiful interval the scholar, the moth, and the stars exist in a shared, silent communion of peace. As he finally closes the inkwell with a soft, wooden thud, the scholar feels a wave of heavy, satisfying exhaustion begin to wash over him. His work for this hour is done, but the night is far from over. The observatory remains a sanctuary of absolute tranquility, a place where time is measured not by the demands of the world, but by the slow rotation of the spheres and the steady cooling of the mountain air. He leans back in his oak chair, feeling the soft fleece of the sheepskin against his neck, and allows his eyes to close for a moment. The after-image of the stars and the glowing brass rings dance behind his eyelids in a soothing geometric ballet. Every breath he takes is deep, slow, and effortless, drawing in the purity of the night and exhaling any remaining fragments of thought. The entire room seems to breathe with him. The stone, the wood, the metal, and the parchment all pulsating with a low, ancient frequency of rest. You too can feel this heavy, golden peace settling into your limbs as the scholar prepares to move into the next phase of his nocturnal vigil, drifting ever closer to the soft, welcoming embrace of a deep and dreamless sleep. As the middle of the night approaches, the air within the stone walls of the observatory grows subtly crisper, a clean and sharp coldness that signifies the deep maturity of the evening. The scholar, feeling this shift in the atmosphere, decides to perform a tradition that bridges the gap between his scientific observations and his spiritual devotion. He reaches for a small footed bowl made of beaten silver which rests on a low marble plinth. The silver is tarnished to a beautiful soft pewter grey, reflecting the moonlight in a muted, ghostly way. Inside the bowl lies a small heap of raw frankincense resins, tears of hardened sap gathered from the distant sun-scorched lands of the east. These resin droplets look like tiny, unpolished amber gems, varying in colour from a pale, translucent lemon to a deep, opaque honey gold. He takes a single small coal from the brazier with his bronze tongs and places it into the silver bowl, with a patience that has become the very fabric of his soul. He waits for the heat to penetrate the resin. For a long minute nothing happens, and then a thin, needle-like thread of blue-white smoke begins to curl upward. This is the ancient scent of the Mediterranean night, a fragrance so profound and evocative that it seems to carry the weight of millennia. The aroma is sharp at first, resinous, pine-like, and slightly lemony, but as it diffuses into the vast domed space, it mellows into a warm, woody, and deeply balsamic perfume. Take a moment to imagine this scent filling the room, weaving through the cypress bookshelves and clinging to the heavy velvet curtains. It is a fragrance that commands the nervous system to surrender, clearing the mind of any lingering analytical clutter and replacing it with a sense of sacred, timeless space. The smoke drifts in slow, hypnotic ribbons, caught in the silver beams of moonlight that slice through the arched windows. It creates a visual symphony of movement in the otherwise still air, a silent dance of ghosts that mirrors the scholar's own internal drifting. He watches a single plume of incense as it rises toward the cedar dome, where it vanishes into the dark, fragrant woodwork. The act of scenting the room is a micro-cleansing, a way of honoring the wisdom contained within the ancient manuscripts and the celestial bodies above. As the scent deepens, the scholar's breathing becomes even slower, even more rhythmic. Each inhalation is a deliberate act of taking in the peace of the monastery, and each exhalation is a release of the self into the infinite dark. The incense does not just smell like wood and sap, it smells like the very concept of endurance, a botanical reminder of the trees that stood for centuries before being harvested for their precious blood. As he waits for the incense to fully permeate the observatory, the scholar focuses on the physical sensations of his own body. He notices the subtle contrast between the warmth of his core, protected by the heavy wool of his habit, and the bracing, refreshing coolness of the air on his exposed skin. He looks down at his hands, resting now on the smooth walnut of the desk. These are hands that have turned thousands of pages, hands that have adjusted delicate brass gears and held heavy stone blocks. The skin is weathered, with a fine network of lines like a topographical map of a life lived in service to knowledge. In the dim light, the texture of his skin is fascinatingly detailed, the subtle ridges of his fingerprints, the way the light catches the fine silver hairs on his knuckles and the rhythmic pulse of a vein in his wrist. He feels the solidity of the wood beneath his palms, a firm and unyielding connection to the physical world. This grounding sensation is essential. It prevents him from floating away entirely into the abstract calculations of the stars. The walnut feels almost like living skin itself, organic, warm, and deeply familiar. He finds himself tracing the edge of a small natural knot in the wood, a tiny swirling vortex that has remained unchanged since the tree was felled. This simple tactile focus is immensely relaxing, a way of anchoring the consciousness in the present moment, free from the anxieties of the future or the regrets of the past. The scholar's attention is then drawn to a small, silver handbell resting near his inkwell. It is an object of exquisite simplicity, its handle carved from a piece of smooth, cool ivory that has yellowed to a rich cream color over the decades. He does not ring the bell. That would be too loud, too disruptive for this hour of profound silence. Instead, he simply brushes the pad of his thumb against the cold metal of the bell's rim. The silver feels remarkably dense and smooth, with a slight metallic tang that lingers on the skin. He notices a small hand-engraved inscription on the bell's surface, a single Greek word meaning peace. This tiny detail hidden in the shadows is a secret known only to him and those who occupied this seat before him. It is a reminder that the ultimate goal of his study, his writing and his sleepless vigils, is not merely the accumulation of facts, but the attainment of a quiet, unshakable soul. The bell stands as a silent sentinel of this intention, a small anchor of silver in a sea of dark stone and ancient wood. The moon has now moved to a position where it shines directly through the tallest of the eastern arches, casting a long rectangular pool of brilliant white light onto the geometric floor. The light is so bright that it washes out the colours of the marble and slate, turning the floor into a stark, beautiful landscape of silver and shadow. The scholar watches as a few stray dust motes drift into this beam of light. Each one becomes a tiny, brilliant spark, a microscopic star that exists for only a moment before drifting back into the darkness. He contemplates the sheer scale of the universe, where even the grandest stars are but dust motes in the eyes of the infinite. This thought, rather than being overwhelming, is deeply comforting. It reminds him of his own smallness, and in that smallness there is a profound lack of responsibility. He is not the master of the heavens, he is merely a guest, a witness, a small consciousness granted a few brief decades to marvel at the machinery of the cosmos. This realization causes a final deep wave of relaxation to spread through his body. His shoulders drop another inch, his jaw softens completely, and his heart slows to a steady, peaceful thud that echoes the rhythmic dripping of the water clock. He begins to prepare for a period of silent contemplation, a time when he will put down his pen and simply be. He adjusts his position in the oak chair, tucking his feet back into the warmth of the sheepskin fleece. The texture of the wool is incredibly inviting, a soft and springy forest of fibers that cradles his tired limbs. He pulls his heavy woolen cowl up over his head, creating a small private tent of darkness that smells faintly of the frankincense smoke. Inside this cocoon, the sounds of the observatory become even more focused and clear. The distant, muffled sigh of the Aegean Sea, the soft crackle of the dying embers in the brazier, and the gentle, regular sound of his own breath. The world outside is a distant memory, a chaotic dream that has no power over this sanctuary. Here, in the year 1340, on the holy mountain of Athos, there is only the scent of resin, the glow of the moon, and the absolute unyielding presence of peace. You, too, are now fully immersed in this protective cocoon of history and scent. The fragrance of the frankincense has slowed your thoughts to a crawl, and the silver light has washed away the sharp edges of your day. Everything is ready for the deep philosophical reflections that will guide you into the final, most restful stages of the night. As the hour of midnight passes, the observatory becomes a theatre of shifting geometry, where the only actors are the slow-moving moonbeams and the long, elegant shadows they cast across the ancient floor. The scholar has now fully entered a state of receptive stillness, his body anchored in the oak chair, his mind as quiet as the stone walls surrounding him. We focus our attention on the floor where the pool of brilliant silver moonlight has begun its slow, inevitable migration westward. The light is so intense that it seems to have a physical weight, a liquid presence that flows over the edges of the slate and marble tiles. Look closely at the boundary where the silver light meets the deep velvet shadow. It is not a sharp line, but a soft, hazy gradient, a microscopic transition zone where the cold radiance of the moon dissolves into the warm, earthy darkness of the room. Within this transition, the texture of the stone is revealed in breathtaking detail. The pale marble seems to glow from within, its internal crystalline structure catching the light and scattering it in a soft, ethereal radiance. In contrast, the dark slate tiles act as deep wells of silence, absorbing the light and providing a grounding, somber counterpoint to the moon's brilliance. This interplay of light and dark is profoundly hypnotic, a slow-motion dance that has been performed in this very room for hundreds of years, regardless of who was present to witness it. The scholar watches the shadow of the great armillary sphere as it stretches across the floor. In the silver light, the shadow is elongated and distorted, turning the complex brass instrument into a grand, abstract skeletal map. The shadow of each individual ring, the equator, the tropics, the ecliptic, is cast with remarkable clarity, creating a series of intersecting arcs that look like a dark, geometric flower blooming on the marble. As the moon climbs higher, these shadows move with an agonizing slowness, a movement so gradual that it can only be perceived by the most patient observer. To watch this movement is to witness the very rotation of the Earth itself, a silent cosmic choreography that bypasses the frantic pace of human life. The scholar finds himself fascinated by the way a single shadow line moves across a thin vein of grey in a marble tile. It takes many minutes for the dark edge to traverse a single inch of stone. This observation of micro-time is immensely sedating. It recalibrates the internal clock of the observer, stripping away the urgency of the minutes and replacing it with the profound, unhurried scale of the celestial. You can feel your own heart rate slowing in response to this visual pacing, your breathing becoming as shallow and regular as the rising and falling of the tide. In this deep hour, the silence of the observatory takes on a new quality. It is no longer just the absence of noise, but a thick, textural presence that seems to press gently against the skin. It is a living silence, composed of the faint, distant sounds of the mountain that only serve to emphasize the quietude within. Somewhere far below, a single owl may call from a gnarled pine tree, the sound so muffled by distance and stone that it feels like a memory of a sound rather than the thing itself. The rhythmic plink of the water clock continues, but even this becomes a part of the silence, a heartbeat that the room has grown so accustomed to that it no longer registers as a disruption. The scholar focuses on the sensation of this silence in his ears, a soft white noise hum that is the sound of the universe breathing. He notices how the thick stone walls and the heavy cedar dome act as a protective barrier, filtering out the chaotic energies of the world. Inside this sanctuary, the air is still, yet it feels vibrant and charged with the accumulated thoughts of centuries. He imagines the silence as a vast, dark ocean, and himself as a small, steady anchor resting on its floor. This image is incredibly grounding, providing a sense of absolute security and peace. His attention then drifts to the microscopic details of the stone wall directly across from him. In the dim reflected light, the rough-hewn surface of the limestone reveals a world of complexity. He can see the tiny fossilized imprints of prehistoric sea creatures, minute shells and skeletal fragments, trapped forever in the rock. These creatures lived millions of years ago in a shallow sea, and now they form the very walls of his laboratory of the stars. The contrast between the ancient frozen time of the fossils and the vast eternal time of the stars above is a source of profound philosophical comfort. It suggests that everything from the smallest shell to the largest galaxy is part of a single continuous and highly ordered narrative. He reaches out a hand to touch the wall, feeling the cold, gritty texture of the limestone against his palm. The stone is unyielding and solid, a physical manifestation of endurance. He finds a small, smooth depression in the rock, perhaps where a piece of flint was once embedded, and he rests his finger there. The coolness of the stone travels up his arm, a refreshing sensation that clears away the last vestiges of mental fog. The wall is not just a boundary, it is a companion, a silent witness that has stood firm through storms, earthquakes, and the rise and fall of empires. As he sits there, the scholar notices the way the scent of the frankincense has changed. The initial sharp, resinous notes have vanished, replaced by a deep, earthy, and almost sweet musk that clings to the shadows. This aged scent is even more relaxing than the fresh smoke, acting as a gentle sedative that encourages the eyelids to grow heavy. The air feels thicker now, more substantial, like a physical embrace. He pulls the caracul fleece closer around his shoulders, feeling the incredible softness of the wool fibers. Each individual lock of wool is a tiny, springy spiral, a masterpiece of natural engineering designed to trap warmth and provide comfort. The weight of the fleece is like a reassuring hand on his shoulder, telling him that it is safe to let go, safe to surrender to the night. He watches the way the silver moonlight catches the tips of the silver-grey wool, turning the fleece into a shimmering landscape of light and shadow. Everything in the room, from the grandest dome to the smallest fibre of wool, is now participating in this grand, silent ceremony of rest. The moon has now moved so high that the floor is largely back in shadow, with only a thin sliver of light remaining at the very edge of the eastern arch. The observatory has become a realm of deep indigo and charcoal, a space where the boundaries between objects begin to blur. The scholar feels himself becoming a part of this blurring, his own identity softening and expanding to fill the room. He is the stone, the wood, the brass, and the stars. There is no longer any need for observation or calculation. There is only the pure, wordless experience of being. He closes his eyes, and the image of the shifting shadows remains etched in his mind, a geometric lullaby that guides him toward the threshold of sleep. The entire mountain of Athos seems to be holding its breath, cradling this small stone tower in its ancient arms, ensuring that nothing will disturb the profound, sacred peace of the 14th-century night. You, too, are now hovering at this same threshold, your mind a calm, dark mirror reflecting the absolute stillness of the stars, as we prepare to move even deeper into the philosophical heart of this celestial sanctuary. As the deep velvet hours of the morning continue to unfold, the scholar finds himself drifting into a state of consciousness that the ancients called the musica universalis, or the music of the spheres. This is not a music heard with the ears, but a harmony perceived by the soul, a realization that the entire universe, from the spinning planets to the microscopic dust motes, moves in a perfect mathematical and rhythmic order. In the absolute stillness of the Mount Athos Observatory, this silent symphony becomes almost tangible. Sitting motionless in his high-backed oak chair, the scholar begins to listen not to the world, but to the silence itself. Within this silence, he begins to discern the incredibly subtle, microscopic sounds of the building. He hears the faint rhythmic tick-creak of the massive cedar dome above him as the ancient wood slowly contracts in the cooling night air. It is a slow, organic sound, a testament to the fact that even the most solid structures are alive and breathing in their own tectonic way. This sound is not jarring, rather it is deeply reassuring, like the gentle settling of a large protective animal preparing for sleep. It reminds him that he is contained within a living piece of history, a sanctuary that responds to the elements with a dignified, slow-motion grace. Beyond the movement of the wood there is the voice of the wind. Even on the calmest nights at this high altitude, the air is never truly still. He listens to the incredibly soft, ethereal whistling as the breeze catches the sharp edges of the exterior limestone blocks or filters through the narrow slit windows of the stairwell. It is a sound like a distant flautist playing a single, sustained note on a hollow reed, a high, thin, and remarkably pure vibration that seems to come from the very edge of the world. This sound does not disturb the peace of the room. Instead, it reinforces the sense of isolation and height. It reminds the scholar that he is perched on a sacred peak suspended between the earth and the heavens, far above the reach of human discord. He focuses on the texture of this sound, imagining the air molecules as they tumble over the rough stone, swirling in tiny invisible eddies before dissipating into the vast dark. This focus on the invisible movement of the air is intensely hypnotic, stripping away the last layers of physical awareness and leaving him feeling weightless, as if he were drifting on those very currents. Closer to home, the scholar begins to tune into the rhythmic symphony of his own body. In this level of profound quietude, the sound of his own heartbeat becomes a steady, grounding drum, a low, muted thump-thump that echoes the liquid pulse of the water clock. He feels the blood moving through his veins, a warm and life-giving tide that follows the same laws of fluid dynamics as the mountain springs outside. His breathing, too, has become a part of the room's atmosphere, a soft, regular shh-ha that matches the swaying of the heavy velvet curtains. He realizes that there is no separation between the rhythm of his own heart and the rotation of the stars above. Both are governed by the same divine geometry, the same elegant laws of motion. This realization is the pinnacle of 14th-century philosophical comfort. It is the knowledge that one is never truly alone, never truly lost, because one is an integral part of a vast, harmonious, and beautifully ordered whole. The feeling of being in tune with the cosmos brings a wave of relaxation so deep that it feels almost like a physical sinking, as if the oak chair and the stone floor were gently giving way to cradle him in the very fabric of the universe. The scholar's gaze drifts to a small ornamental brass bowl resting on a side table, filled with incredibly clear, still water. In the low, reflected light, the surface of the water acts as a perfect dark mirror. He watches as the microscopic vibrations of the building, the settling wood, the distant sea, his own heartbeat, create tiny, almost invisible ripples on the water's surface. These ripples form complex, shimmering interference patterns, concentric circles that expand and overlap in a delicate, liquid geometry. Watching these patterns is a form of visual meditation. Each tiny wave is a physical manifestation of a sound, a bridge between the audible and the visible. He contemplates how the entire universe is like this bowl of water, constantly vibrating with the music of existence, even when we are too busy or too noisy to perceive it. The stillness of the water in the bowl is not a lack of movement, but a perfect balance of forces, a dynamic peace that he seeks to replicate within his own mind. He traces the rim of the bowl with his eyes, noting the tiny hand-etched symbols of the zodiac that encircle the metal. Each symbol is a small, dark valley in the golden brass, catching the shadows and holding them close. The scent of the room has now settled into a final, most peaceful stage. The frankincense has faded into a ghostly sweet musk, while the aroma of the cypress shelves has become more prominent, a dry and resinous backbone to the air. Underneath it all there is the clean metallic scent of the cold brass instruments and the faint stony smell of the damp limestone. This olfactory profile is the scent of time, a mixture of the organic and the mineral, the fleeting and the eternal. It is a smell that has no place in the frantic modern world, belonging only to the high, quiet places of the earth. The scholar draws it in deeply, feeling the cool air expand his lungs and then leave his body in a slow, satisfied sigh. The air feels remarkably pure, as if it has been filtered through the stars themselves before reaching his mountaintop sanctuary. As the moon begins its final descent toward the horizon, the light in the observatory changes once again. The brilliant silver gives way to a deeper, more mysterious indigo, and the shadows lose their sharp edges, becoming soft, hazy blurs. The scholar feels a profound sense of completion. He has observed the stars, recorded their movements, and contemplated the deep, silent music that binds them together. His work is no longer a task, but a state of being. He closes his eyes and allows the musica universalis to fill his consciousness. The creak of the wood, the hum of the wind, the throb of his heart, and the silent rotation of the spheres all merging into a single beautiful and overwhelming chord of peace. There is nothing left to do but listen. There is nothing left to be but still. The night has achieved its purpose, and the path to sleep is now wide open, a soft and starlit road leading into the heart of the infinite. You too are now part of this symphony. Your thoughts have become like those ripples on the water, slow, beautiful, and gradually fading into a perfect glassy stillness. As the stars continue their slow, majestic wheeling overhead, a profound sense of physical and mental completion begins to settle over the scholar. The most intense period of observation has passed, and the body now signals its readiness to transition from the heights of celestial study to the soft, grounding embrace of rest. This is not a sudden realization, but a gradual dawning of peace. a heavy golden lethargy that starts in the tips of the fingers and flows slowly upward through the arms and into the shoulders. The scholar begins the delicate rhythmic process of concluding his night's work. Every movement is performed with an even greater degree of slowness than before, as if he were trying not to wake the very air in the room. He reaches for the small, heavy glass inkwell, his fingers brushing against the cool, smooth surface of the vessel. The glass is dark and thick, possessing a weight that is immensely satisfying. With a steady, practiced hand, he picks up the small wooden stopper, carved from a piece of dense, aromatic cedar. He gently presses it into the neck of the inkwell. The sound is a soft, muffled thump, a tiny final punctuation mark at the end of a long sentence of scholarly labour. As the seal is made, the faint metallic scent of the ink is contained, leaving only the lingering sweet musk of the frankincense and the dry, ancient smell of the library to dominate the senses. Next, he turns his attention to the great ledger, the physical record of his communion with the stars. The ink is now completely dry, having transformed from a glistening liquid into a permanent, matte charcoal etching within the fibres of the vellum. He looks at the pages one last time, appreciating the rhythmic beauty of the Greek script. Then, he takes the heavy wooden cover of the book and begins to close it. This is a movement of immense gravity and grace. He feels the weight of the thousands of pages as they are pressed back together, releasing a soft, dry puff of air that smells like old parchment and centuries of stored wisdom. The sound of the book closing is a deep, resonant whoomp, a sound that seems to echo not just in the room but in the very bones of the mountain. It is a profoundly final and comforting noise, signalling that the day's intellectual debts have been paid in full. He then takes the two bronze clasps, feeling their cold, intricate scrollwork against his thumbs, and snaps them shut. The twin clicks are sharp and clear in the silence, two tiny melodic notes that indicate the knowledge within is now safely locked away, protected from the passage of time and the prying eyes of the uninitiated. The scholar then begins to tidy his instruments, a task that is as much a part of his meditation as the observations themselves. He picks up the small bronze dividers, holding them up to the fading moonlight. He notices the tiny microscopic scratches on the metal, the record of years of precise measurement. He carefully folds the dividers and places them back into their velvet-lined wooden case. The case is made of dark mahogany, its interior a deep royal purple that seems to swallow the light. As the metal touches the velvet, there is no sound at all, only the tactile sensation of the tool being cradled in softness. He repeats this process with each of his instruments, the copper sighting tube, the sandalwood tray of crystal lenses, the silver vial of water. Each object is returned to its specific designated place with a level of care that borders on the sacred. To the scholar, these are not just tools, they are extensions of his own senses, and by caring for them, he is caring for his own connection to the divine order of the universe. This ritual of organization is intensely sedating as it reinforces the idea that the world is a place of order, stability, and predictable peace. With the desk now clear and the ledger closed, the scholar allows his hands to rest flat on the surface of the walnut desk. He feels the immense, solid weight of his own arms, a heavy and pleasant sensation of fatigue. His fingers are slightly stiff from hours of holding the quill and adjusting the brass gears. But it is a good stiffness, the physical evidence of a night spent in purposeful devotion. He notices the fine pale dust of the parchment that has settled in the creases of his skin and the faint blue-black stain of ink on his middle finger. These are the marks of his craft, the temporary tattoos of a nocturnal philosopher. He finds himself tracing the grain of the wood one last time, feeling the subtle, swirling patterns that have become as familiar to him as the constellations themselves. The desk is his anchor, a solid piece of the earth that keeps him grounded, even as his mind travels to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. The coolness of the wood is incredibly refreshing, a final grounding touch before he moves away from the workstation. He then stands up from the oak chair, a movement that is slow and somewhat creaky, much like the building itself. As he rises, he feels the blood rushing back into his legs, a warm and tingling sensation that is strangely pleasant. He stands for a moment, letting his height settle, and looks out through the arched windows. The Aegean Sea below is still a dark, undulating mystery, but the very first, almost imperceptible hint of grey is beginning to touch the eastern horizon. This is the false dawn, the moment when the night is at its deepest and most silent, yet the promise of the morning is already being whispered by the earth. The air feels even colder now, a brisk and invigorating chill that cuts through the lingering warmth of the mountain tea. He draws his heavy woolen habit tighter around him, feeling the coarse protective texture of the fabric. The sound of his robe rustling against his legs is the only noise in the vast chamber, a soft, dry whispering that emphasizes the overwhelming stillness of the mountain. Finally, he walks slowly toward the central armillary sphere. He does not move it now, he simply stands beside it, a silent sentinel next to a silent machine. He watches as the last sliver of moonlight catches the very top of the brass meridian ring, creating a single brilliant point of light that looks like a captured star. The sphere looks remarkably peaceful in its stillness, a metallic skeleton of the heavens resting after a long night of movement. He realizes that he too is ready to rest. The intellectual journey is over, the physical body is demanding its due. He feels a wave of heavy, irresistible drowsiness wash over him, a feeling like being pulled down into a deep, warm and lightless well. His eyes flutter, his breathing deepens into a slow, rhythmic swell, and he begins to prepare his mind for the final descent into sleep. The observatory has done its work, providing a sanctuary of starlight and stone, and now it stands ready to guard his dreams with the same unwavering patience it has shown for centuries. You too can feel this same sense of completion, this same heavy golden peace as the night reaches its absolute silent zenith. The moment has arrived for the final act of the scholar's nightly vigil, the quiet surrender of the artificial flame to the encompassing majesty of the natural dark. He stands before the small terracotta olive oil lamp, the same vessel that has provided a steady amber companion throughout the long hours of study. The flame is now small and low, a tiny glowing teardrop that seems to pulse with a life of its own, drawing the very last of the golden oil from the porous clay. The scholar leans in close, his face illuminated by the warm, flickering radiance which highlights the deep, peaceful lines of his forehead and the silver-grey stubble on his chin. He takes a single, deep and incredibly slow breath, filling his lungs with the scent of the cooling night. Then, with a gentle and deliberate puff of air so soft it wouldn't disturb a dandelion seed, he extinguishes the flame. In the immediate aftermath, a thin, ghostly ribbon of grey smoke rises from the blackened linen wick. This smoke is not acrid or harsh, it carries the final sweet and toasted aroma of heated oil and burnt plant fibre. Watch this last wisp of smoke as it undulates in the air, a delicate, ephemeral dancer that loses itself in the shadows of the high cedar dome. This is the official end of the light, the moment when the room returns to its primordial state of silver and shadow. As the golden glow vanishes, the transition to absolute moonlight is profound. Your eyes and the eyes of the scholar must wait for several long moments to recalibrate to the deep indigo palette of the room. This period of waiting is intensely relaxing. It is a forced pause that encourages the mind to settle even further. Gradually the world reappears, but it is a transformed world. The white marble tiles now look like pools of frozen milk, and the dark slate tiles have become bottomless voids. The brass instruments, deprived of the amber warmth of the lamp, now reflect only the cold, hard brilliance of the moon, appearing like objects made of solid starlight. The scholar stands perfectly still in this newfound darkness, allowing the shadows to wrap around him like a heavy protective cloak. This is the true observatory, the place where the barrier between the human observer and the celestial observed is at its thinnest. In this darkness, the sense of hearing becomes even more acute. He can hear the distant, rhythmic drumming of the Aegean Sea more clearly now, a low-frequency vibration that seems to thrum in the very marrow of his bones. He feels the immense, silent weight of the mountain pressing upward beneath his feet, a solid and unmoving foundation that stretches down to the roots of the earth. He begins his walk toward the exit, his footsteps on the marble floor sounding like soft, rhythmic sighs, because he knows this room by heart, having traversed its diameter thousands of times in the dark. He does not need to look where he is going, he relies on the tactile memory of the space. He feels the slight change in the air's temperature as he passes an open archway, and the subtle shift in the floor's texture where a marble tile meets a slate one. This blind navigation is a testament to his deep connection with the sanctuary. The building has become a part of his own body. He reaches out a hand to brush against the corner of a cypress bookshelf, feeling the dry, splinter-free grain of the wood. It is a brief, grounding contact, a silent goodnight to the thousands of silent authors who have kept him company throughout the night. The scent of the room is now at its peak of complexity. The cold stone, the ancient paper, the fading incense, and the crisp, ozone-rich air of the pre-dawn mountain. It is a scent that clears the soul, a fragrant baptism that prepares him for the purity of sleep. He reaches the top of the spiral staircase, the narrow aperture that will lead him down from the heavens and back to the earthly realm of the monastery. He pauses one last time, looking back over the vast circular chamber. The moon is now so low in the west that the shadows are unimaginably long, stretching across the floor like the fingers of a sleeping giant. The armillary sphere, the water clock, the heavy oak chair, all of them are now mere silhouettes, dark shapes defined by the silver light behind them. The room feels incredibly ancient, a place that exists outside the normal flow of time. It is a vessel of silence, a cathedral of the stars. The scholar feels a profound sense of gratitude for this space, for the privilege of being the one to witness these specific hours of these specific nights. He realizes that his own life is like that single extinguished flame, a small bright moment in a vast, dark and beautiful eternity. This thought, rather than being melancholic, is deeply satisfying. It provides a sense of perspective that makes all human worries seem like the dancing dust motes he observed earlier, tiny, transient, and ultimately part of a much grander light. The descent down the stairs is even slower than the ascent. Each granite step is cold and solid, a reassuring presence beneath his leather-soled sandals. The walls of the stairwell are close and comforting, pressing against his shoulders like a firm embrace. He moves through the bands of moonlight that still filter through the narrow slit windows, feeling the brief flicker of silver light on his face before returning to the protective dark. The air in the stairwell is still and heavy, carrying the scent of moss and damp stone. With every step downward, he feels himself sinking deeper into a state of physical surrender. The effort of the night is behind him. The reward of the rest is ahead. His breathing is now so slow and rhythmic that it is almost undetectable, a soft internal tide that moves with the grace of the spheres. He is no longer thinking about stars or calculations. He is merely a physical being moving through a physical space, guided by instinct and memory. Finally, he reaches the great oak door at the base of the tower. He places his hand on the heavy iron latch, feeling its cold, pitted surface. With a slow, controlled movement, he lifts the latch. The sound is a dull metallic clack that echoes up the stairwell, a signal to the building that its guardian is departing. He pulls the door open just a few inches, allowing a sliver of the cold, pre-dawn mountain air to rush in. This air is remarkably sharp and clean, tasting of pine needles and snow from the distant peaks. He steps out onto the stone landing, and for a moment he is once again under the vast open sky. The stars are fading now, their light being swallowed by the gathering grey of the east. The world is in that magical liminal state between the dream of the night and the reality of the day. He turns back and closes the door with a soft, resonant thud, ensuring that the peace of the observatory remains sealed within its walls. He is now ready to walk the short path to his cell, where a simple bed of straw and wool awaits him. You too are now stepping away from the active world of observation. Your own internal door is closing, sealing in the peace and the silence of the 14th-century mountain, as you prepare for the final, most profound transition of all. Leaving the heavy oak door of the observatory behind, the scholar begins his slow, rhythmic descent along the narrow stone path that winds like a pale ribbon through the rugged landscape of Mount Athos. The world at this hour is painted in 1,000 shades of charcoal, indigo, and a faint, ethereal violet. There is no sun yet, only the first light, which is more of a felt presence than a visible one, a thinning of the darkness that makes the outlines of the ancient cypress trees appear like silent, tall sentinels guarding the secrets of the mountain. Let us focus on the tactile experience of this walk. Beneath the thin, flexible leather soles of the scholar's sandals, the path is a complex mosaic of textures. He feels the smooth, cold surfaces of large river stones embedded in the earth, followed by the crunch of fine grey gravel that has been weathered by centuries of rain and wind. Each footfall produces a soft, rhythmic sound, a dry, muffled sliding of leather on stone that is incredibly grounding. In the absolute silence of the pre-dawn, this sound becomes a heartbeat, a steady cadence that guides his mind away from the complex calculations of the stars and back to the simple raw reality of the earth. As he walks, the air around him begins to change. Away from the sheltered stone walls of the tower, the mountain breeze is more direct, carrying the heavy, intoxicating scent of the wild Mediterranean flora. It is a fragrance of deep, resinous pine, mixed with the sharp, medicinal clarity of wild rosemary and the earthy, damp smell of moss growing in the shadows of the cliffs. Take a slow, deep breath, imagining this air entering your lungs. It is remarkably crisp and pure, possessing a quality of newness, as if it had never been breathed by another soul. This olfactory immersion acts as a final cleanser for the scholar's mind. The scent of the rosemary in particular is known for its ability to clear the senses, and here in the high altitude it feels like a cool botanical wave washing away the last lingering fatigue of the night's study. He notices the way the moisture of the early morning has settled on the needles of the pine trees, forming tiny microscopic beads of dew that catch the faint grey light. If he were to brush against a branch, he would feel the sudden, refreshing shock of the cold water, a tactile reminder of the mountain's living, breathing presence. The scholar's gaze drifts to the horizon, where the line between the dark Aegean Sea and the lightening sky is becoming more distinct. He reflects on the nature of this boundary, the liminal space between night and day, between the known and the unknown. In the 14th century, time is not a series of digital numbers, but a fluid, organic progression of light and shadow. He contemplates how his entire life has been a journey through such boundaries. Sitting in the observatory, he was a bridge between the earth and the heavens. Now on this path he is a bridge between the silence of the night and the communal life of the monastery. This thought brings a profound sense of peace. He realizes that there is no need to rush, no need to arrive. The path itself is the destination. Every step is a complete action, a microcosm of the journey of a soul toward its ultimate rest. He watches a single small pebble as it is kicked forward by his sandal, tumbling slowly down a small incline before coming to rest against a tuft of silver-green grass. The utter insignificance of this movement, contrasted with the vast rotation of the galaxies he just witnessed, is deeply comforting. It reinforces the idea that every part of the universe, no matter how small, is governed by the same laws of motion and grace. The path now leads him past a small, ancient stone shrine built into the side of a cliff. The shrine is simple, a small arched alcove containing a faded icon and a single unlit oil lamp. The scholar pauses for a moment, not to pray in the formal sense, but to acknowledge the presence of the generations who have walked this path before him. He reaches out and touches the rough, cold surface of the shrine stone. The limestone is pitted and weathered, its texture like the skin of an ancient animal. He feels the profound weight of history in this contact. These stones have seen the rise and fall of empires, the passing of plagues, and the quiet lives of thousands of monks who sought the same peace he now feels. This realization of long time, the deep geological time of the mountain and the historical time of the monastery, causes his own personal worries to vanish entirely. He is a small, temporary note in a vast and eternal symphony. This lack of permanence is not frightening. It is a liberation. It means he can let go of the burden of the self and simply be a witness to the beauty of the world. He continues his walk, noticing how the silence of the mountain is starting to be populated by the first, incredibly soft sounds of the waking world. Far off in the distance he hears the faint rhythmic clack-clack of a wooden cimantron, a long carved beam of wood struck with a mallet calling the monks to the first prayers of the morning. The sound is hollow and musical, echoing off the stone walls of the valley with a haunting rhythmic beauty. It is a sound that has echoed across this peninsula for 1,000 years, a timeless signal of the continuity of life. He also hears the first tentative chirps of the mountain birds, tiny high-pitched vibrations that cut through the cool air like needles of sound. These noises do not break the silence, they frame it, giving it a depth and a texture that it lacked in the dead of night. He focuses on the layering of these sounds, the distant wood, the nearby birds, the rustle of his own robe, creating a sensory tapestry that is immensely soothing. As the monastery walls finally come into view, a series of high grey stone ramparts rising out of the mist, the scholar feels a wave of heavy, satisfying completion. The journey from the stars back to the earth is almost finished. He looks down at his hands one last time, noting how the faint light makes the skin appear almost translucent. He feels the immense solid reality of his body, a vessel that has carried his mind through the wonders of the cosmos and now demands the simple, honest reward of sleep. His breathing is now so deep and regular that it feels as if the mountain itself were breathing through him. Every muscle in his legs and back is relaxed, moving with a fluid, automatic grace that requires no thought. He is a part of the landscape, a moving shadow in a world of silver and stone. You too can feel this sense of effortless movement, this drifting through a world of ancient beauty where time has no meaning and the only reality is the cool air, the scent of pine, and the soft, rhythmic sound of feet on stone. We are almost home, almost at the point where the journey ends and the deep, dreamless sleep begins. The scholar finally reaches the great fortified gate of the monastery, a massive portal of iron-bound timber that has stood as a guardian against the world for more than 4 centuries. As he passes through the smaller wicket door, a modest opening designed for a single traveller, the transition is sensory and immediate. The open, airy vastness of the mountain slopes is suddenly replaced by the intimate, protective embrace of the cloister. Here, within the high perimeter walls, the air is noticeably stiller and holds a faint, residual warmth from the sun-baked stones of the previous day. This is the heart of the sanctuary, a space where the architecture itself seems to lean in and whisper of safety and seclusion. The ground beneath his feet changes from the irregular gravel of the mountain path to large, smooth flagstones of dark basalt, worn to a soft, undulating surface by the rhythmic passage of thousands of silent monks. The texture of these stones is incredibly comforting. They feel solid, ancient, and deeply permanent. He walks with a slow, measured gait, his footsteps producing a low, hollow resonance that echoes softly against the vaulted ceilings of the surrounding walkways. This sound is a familiar lullaby, a signal that he has returned to the world of brotherhood and shared silence. The courtyard is a masterpiece of shadow and subtle light. Tall, elegant stone arches line the perimeter, supported by thick, squat columns with hand-carved capitals depicting vines, leaves, and geometric crosses. In the centre of the courtyard stands an ancient fountain, its basin carved from a single block of grey marble. Though the water flow has been reduced to a mere trickle for the night, the sound of the droplets falling into the pool is a delicate crystalline music, a persistent drip-drop that mirrors the water clock in the observatory, but with a softer, more organic tone. The moisture from the fountain creates a microclimate of cool dampness, and as the scholar passes, he catches the fresh mineral scent of wet stone mixed with the deep green aroma of the moss and ferns that cling to the shaded crevices. This smell is profoundly grounding, drawing his spirit down from the ethereal heights of the stars and anchoring it in the fertile, living reality of the earth. He pauses for a moment by a pillar, resting his hand on the cool, slightly damp stone. He can feel the microscopic texture of the lichen, a soft and velvety crust that has claimed the stone as its own. This slow biological persistence is a beautiful contrast to the eternal, unchanging light of the stars he spent the night observing. As he moves deeper into the corridors, the scent of the monastery begins to layer itself over the mountain air. It is a rich, complex tapestry of daily life lived with intention. He detects the faint, lingering smell of the evening's lentil pottage from the refectory, a warm and savoury aroma that speaks of simple, honest sustenance. Beneath that, there is the ever-present fragrance of beeswax and old wood, and the sharp, clean scent of the lye used to scrub the stone floors. Every few paces he passes a heavy wooden door leading to a cell or a storeroom. These doors are works of art in their own right, their surfaces scarred by the passage of time and the elements, yet still holding the deep, dark beauty of aged oak. He notices the way the faint, pre-dawn light catches the iron rings and latches, casting long, distorted shadows that dance along the whitewashed walls. The walls themselves are not flat. They are a landscape of subtle bumps and ridges where the lime plaster has been applied by hand, creating a soft, tactile surface that feels incredibly human and approachable. Watching the play of light on these textures is intensely hypnotic, a visual rhythm that encourages the mind to drift into a state of pre-sleep trance. The scholar's path takes him through a long arched gallery that overlooks the monastery gardens. Even in the dim light he can see the silver-grey leaves of the olive trees and the dark vertical silhouettes of the cypresses. The air here is thick with the scent of lavender and sage, which the monks grow for their medicinal properties. This botanical perfume is a natural sedative, a gift from the earth that prepares the body for deep rest. He closes his eyes for a second, allowing the scent to wash over him, and he realizes that the order he sought in the stars is also present here, in the arrangement of the garden and the rhythm of the monastic life. The universe is a series of nested sanctuaries, from the vast dome of the sky to the small, stone-walled garden, and finally to the quiet cell where he will soon lay his head. This sense of being contained and protected is the ultimate comfort, a psychological blanket that removes the last vestiges of alertness from his mind. He feels his body becoming heavier, his movements more fluid and automatic, as he nears the end of his physical journey. Near the entrance to the dormitory wing, there is a small wall-mounted basin of holy water, carved in the shape of a scallop shell. The scholar performs a final habitual gesture, dipping his fingertips into the cool liquid and touching his forehead. The water is remarkably cold, a sharp, refreshing sting that serves as a final clearing of the senses before he enters the realm of dreams. He notices the way the water clings to his skin, a shimmering liquid film that evaporates slowly in the still air. This simple act of ritual is a bridge between the intellectual labor of the night and the spiritual rest of the morning. It is a moment of total surrender, a recognition that his work is done and he is now in the hands of a higher power and the natural laws of sleep. The silence in this part of the monastery is different from the silence of the observatory. It is a social silence, thick with the presence of dozens of sleeping brothers, a communal peace that is incredibly reassuring. He is not a solitary figure in a cold tower anymore. He is a member of a living, breathing body, resting in unison. Finally, he turns a corner and enters the narrow hallway that leads to his own cell. The floor here is made of thick wooden planks of chestnut which give off a soft, comforting creak under his weight. This sound is not a disruption but a gentle greeting, a familiar voice that welcomes him home. The hallway is dark, lit only by a single tiny oil lamp at the far end, which casts a long golden pool of light along the floor. The shadows here are soft and warm, hugging the corners and smoothing out the edges of the world. The scholar feels a profound sense of belonging to this space, a feeling that every stone, every plank, and every shadow knows his name. He reaches his door, a simple, unadorned piece of pine, and rests his forehead against the cool wood for a brief moment. He can smell the resin of the pine and the faint, dusty scent of his own woolen bedding through the cracks. The journey is over, the stars are gone, the path is walked, and the sanctuary is reached. You too are now standing at the threshold of your own internal cell, your mind a quiet, darkened room ready to receive the gift of total, uninterrupted rest. The scholar reaches out and pushes open the door to his cell, the wood yielding with a slow, familiar resistance inside. The space is small, humble, and perfectly ordered, a rectangular sanctuary of stone and shadow that feels like a natural extension of the mountain itself. There is no clutter here, only the essentials for a life of prayer and study. A single high window, narrow as an arrow slit, allows a needle of pale pre-dawn light to pierce the darkness, illuminating the dancing dust motes that seem to have waited all night for his return. The walls are lime-washed to a soft matte white, which in this dim hour appears as a calming, ghostly grey. The air within the cell is still and holds a unique, deeply comforting fragrance, a mixture of sun-dried straw, clean unbleached wool, and the faint, lingering sweetness of the mountain herbs that hang in a small bundle from a wooden peg. This is the scent of true rest, a botanical lullaby that immediately signals to the scholar's brain that the time for labour has ended and the time for surrender has begun. He moves toward his bed, a simple platform of solid pine raised slightly off the stone floor. Resting upon it is a thick mattress filled with fresh mountain-grown rye straw. As he sits down on the edge of the bed, the straw compressed beneath his weight with a soft, rhythmic, crunching sound, a dry, earthy music that is incredibly satisfying to the ear. The straw is not just a filler, it is a living cushion that conforms to the contours of the body, providing a supportive yet yielding foundation. He feels the slight texture of the heavy linen casing through his robe, a sturdy and cool fabric that smells of the fresh air in which it was dried. This tactile contact with the elements of the earth, the wood of the frame, the straw of the mattress, the linen of the cover is profoundly grounding. It strips away the abstract complexities of the celestial spheres and returns him to a state of primal, physical simplicity. He begins to unfasten the heavy woolen cord of his habit, his movements so slow and fluid that they seem to happen in slow motion. Each gesture is a shedding of a layer of his public, scholarly identity, moving him closer to the essential resting self. With his heavy outer habit removed and draped neatly over a wooden stool, he is left in a simple tunic of soft, well-worn flax. The sensation of the cool air on his skin is fleeting, quickly replaced as he pulls back the heavy coverlet made of thick, hand-woven sheep's wool. This blanket is a masterpiece of rustic comfort, possessing a weight and a density that feels like a protective shield against the cold. The wool is slightly coarse to the touch, yet it holds an incredible warmth that has been preserved in the fibres from the sheep of the high pastures. As he slides beneath the coverlet, he feels the sudden, wonderful embrace of this warmth. It wraps around his legs, his hips and his torso, melting away the lingering chill of the stone observatory. He adjusts his position, feeling the straw settle and shift beneath him until every muscle finds its perfect tension-free alignment. He rests his head on a small, firm pillow stuffed with dried lavender and hops, herbs specifically chosen for their power to induce deep and dreamless sleep. The scent is immediate and overwhelming, a floral, earthy cloud that envelops his head and enters his lungs with every slow, rhythmic breath. He lies there for a few moments, perfectly still, his eyes tracing the faint patterns of light on the ceiling. The ceiling is made of heavy timber beams, the dark wood showing the marks of the adze that shaped them centuries ago. In the half-light, these marks look like the waves of a frozen sea, a silent landscape of history that guards his sleep. He reflects on the immense distance he has travelled tonight, not in miles, but in thought. He has journeyed from the microscopic ink on a page to the infinite reaches of the stars, and now back to the microscopic fibres of his wool blanket. He realizes that the peace he feels now is the same peace he felt while watching the rotation of the spheres. It is the peace of being in the right place at the right time, doing the work he was meant to do. The boundaries between his body and the bed seem to dissolve. He no longer feels where the straw ends and his own limbs begin. He is a part of the cell, a part of the monastery, and a part of the mountain. His attention drifts to the sound of his own breathing. It has become a slow, deep, and effortless swell, like the movement of the sea far below the cliffs. Each exhale is a conscious release of a thought, a memory, or a calculation. The number of stars he counted, the alignment of the planets, the price of parchment, all of these things are now like autumn leaves being carried away by a gentle stream. They no longer have weight, they no longer have meaning. He watches as the needle of light from the window begins to widen, almost imperceptibly, the grey turning to a very pale, dusty rose. The world is waking up, but he is descending into the deep, dark well of sleep. He finds a strange and beautiful comfort in this inversion. While others rise to face the labour of the day, he is rewarded with the profound silence of the morning rest. This is the scholar's privilege, a secret pocket of time where the world is quiet and the mind is free to wander the landscapes of dreams. Finally, he allows his heavy eyelids to close. The darkness behind his eyes is not empty. It is a warm velvet space, filled with the after-images of the stars dancing in slow geometric patterns. He feels a final wave of relaxation, a deep golden heaviness that starts at the top of his head and flows all the way down to his toes. Every nerve, every fibre, and every cell in his body is now in a state of absolute surrender. The scent of the lavender is the last thing he perceives, a purple fragrance that seems to paint the darkness. The monastery is silent, the mountain is still, and the scholar is safe. He is no longer a watcher of the stars, he has become one with the night itself. You, too, are now wrapped in this same heavy wool of history and peace. Your own breathing has found the same rhythmic tide, and the world outside has faded into a distant, unimportant whisper. We are at the very edge of sleep, the threshold where the story ends and the rest begins. Lying in the profound velvet darkness of his cell, the scholar allows his mind to wander one last time across the vast landscape of his life's work. The physical world has narrowed to the sensation of the straw mattress and the scent of lavender, but his consciousness remains, for a few final moments, as wide as the Aegean sky. He reflects on the concept of legacy, not the legacy of names or monuments, but the legacy of shared truth. He thinks of the ink drying on the vellum in the tower above, and how those small black markings are more than just data. They are a bridge thrown across the chasm of time. He realizes that a scholar 100 years from now, perhaps sitting in that same oak chair, will run his fingers over the same parchment and see the universe through his eyes. This connection across the centuries is a source of immense, quiet joy. It is a form of immortality that requires no ego, only a dedication to the light. He imagines the lineage of watchers, an unbroken chain of human curiosity stretching back to the ancient Greeks and forward into a future he can only dream of. This sense of being a single vital link in a golden chain of wisdom provides a final, anchoring peace to his soul. His thoughts drift to the nature of the stars themselves, to the medieval mind. The stars are not just burning balls of gas, but celestial markers of divine intent, symbols of constancy in a world that is often chaotic and fleeting. He contemplates the fact that while he sleeps, the stars will continue their silent, perfect rotation. They do not require his observation to exist. They do not need his calculations to stay in their orbits. There is a profound humility in this realization. The universe is a grand, self-sustaining masterpiece, and his role is simply to admire it, to record its rhythms, and to find comfort in its predictability. He thinks of the North Star, the steady anchor of the revolving sky, and finds in its unmoving light a metaphor for the peace he has found in the monastery. The world may change, empires may crumble, and seasons may pass, but the order of the heavens remains unyielding. This constancy is the ultimate sedative, a celestial promise that the morning will always come, and the night will always return with its gift of silence. As he hovers on the threshold of dreams, the scholar experiences a final, beautiful dissolution of the self. He no longer feels like an individual named Constantine or Loannas. He feels like a part of the mountain's breath, a part of the stone walls, and a part of the very light he spent the night studying. This is the apatheia of the Desert Fathers, a state of holy indifference where all personal anxieties, desires, and fears are washed away by the sheer scale of the divine. He sees his life as a single drop of water in the great marble fountain in the courtyard, brief, shimmering, and then merging into the deep, still pool of eternity. This image is not one of loss, but of total, joyous reunion. He finds himself marveling at the microscopic details of this thought, the way the drop of water catches the light for a split second, the soft ripple it creates, and the perfect glassy stillness that follows. The geometry of the water mirrors the geometry of the stars and the geometry of his own resting mind. Everything is connected, everything is in its proper place. The sound of the distant sementron has long since faded, replaced by the deep internal silence of the monastery at rest. He notices the subtle change in the darkness of his cell. The shadows are no longer black, but a deep, resonant indigo, infused with the first whispers of the coming day. He feels the coolness of the air on his forehead. a gentle touch that seems to smooth away the last few lines of concentration from his face. His heart is beating so slowly now that it feels like the rhythmic ticking of a clock that is gradually winding down. Each beat is a soft, muffled echo of the peace that surrounds him. He thinks of the monks in the chapel below, their voices rising in a low Gregorian chant that he can almost hear in the vibrations of the stone. The prayer and the study, the silence and the sound are all parts of the same rhythmic devotion. He closes his mental ledgers, puts away his imaginary pens, and prepares to step off the edge of the waking world. There is a final fleeting thought of the sea. He imagines the dark waves of the Aegean, miles below, gently stroking the base of the cliffs. He feels the rhythm of the tide in his own limbs, a slow, powerful, and irresistible pull toward the depths. The sea is the cradle of life, and the night is the cradle of the soul. He allows himself to be carried by this tide, drifting away from the shore of the conscious mind and into the vast, warm ocean of the subconscious. He is no longer observing the world. He is being observed by it, cradled in the ancient, stony arms of Mount Athos. The scent of the herbs in his pillow, the lavender, the hops, the dried mountain tea reaches a final, intoxicating peak. Acting as a fragrant key that unlocks the door to the dream realm, he is ready. The stars have been recorded, the path has been walked, and the soul is at rest. In these final moments of awareness, the scholar feels a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the stone that shelters him, the wool that warms him, and the stars that guide him. He realizes that the greatest wisdom he has gained tonight is not a mathematical formula, but the ability to be still, to be perfectly, utterly, and beautifully still. This stillness is his gift to himself and his gift to the world. As his consciousness flickers like the last drop of oil in the lamp, he sees a single brilliant star in his mind's eye, a star of pure white peace. He follows this light as it leads him deeper and deeper into the dark, until there is no longer a star and a scholar, but only the light itself. You too are now part of this light. Your own journey through the 14th-century night has reached its perfect philosophical conclusion. The world of the 1340s is now a soft, fading tapestry, and the only reality is the deep, restorative, and infinite peace that awaits you in the heart of your dreams. Now, as the world of the 14th century begins to dissolve into the softest edges of your consciousness, we leave behind the world of thought, the world of history, and the world of calculation. There is nothing left to understand, nothing left to remember, and absolutely nothing left to do but drift. Imagine the heavy velvet silence of the monastery cell as a physical presence, a warm and weightless sea that is slowly rising to meet you. You are floating on the surface of this vast, dark ocean of peace, supported by the ancient stone and the scent of the mountain herbs. The air in the room has become remarkably thick and soft, like a cloud of fine grey silk that presses gently against your skin. Every breath you take is a slow, rhythmic wave that carries you further away from the shore of the waking mind. Feel the expansion of your lungs as you draw in the cool, lavender-scented air, and feel the absolute heavy surrender as you exhale, letting your body sink deeper and deeper into the mattress of straw. The sound of the straw shifting beneath you is a faint, dry whisper, a rhythmic lullaby that says, "Sleep now, rest now, let go now." In your mind's eye, see the single needle of light from the narrow window. It is no longer a sharp beam, but a soft, hazy glow of pale indigo and silver. Watch as this light moves with an agonizing, beautiful slowness across the lime-washed wall. It is a silent clock, a visual heartbeat that reminds you that time has no meaning here. The light is not trying to wake you, it is merely a gentle companion, a silent witness to your deepening rest. Every few minutes, the light shifts by a fraction of a hair's breadth, and with each shift, a new layer of tension melts away from your body. Your feet are heavy, so heavy they feel like they are made of the very granite of the mountain. Your legs are relaxed, sinking into the soft rye straw until they are completely weightless. Your hips and your back are supported by the immense, steady strength of the pine bed frame, allowing every muscle to release its hold. Your shoulders have dropped, your neck is soft, and your jaw is entirely relaxed, leaving your face as smooth and still as the water in the bronze bowl. Focus again on the scent of the cell. It is a fragrance that has been refined by centuries of silence. The lavender is a soft purple mist that settles over your thoughts. The hops are a deep, earthy weight that grounds your spirit. The dried mountain tea is a sweet, herbal memory of the high slopes. These scents are not separate. They have merged into a single, intoxicating perfume of slumber. With every inhalation, this perfume travels through your body, turning your blood into a warm, golden liquid that moves with the slow, inevitable grace of the mountain springs. You can feel this warmth in your fingertips, in your palms, and in the center of your chest. It is the warmth of the sheep's wool, the warmth of the olive oil lamp, and the warmth of a life lived in harmony with the stars. This warmth is your sanctuary, a private sun that glows in the center of your being, pushing back the coldness of the world and inviting you to surrender to the deep, protective dark. Think of the armillary sphere in the tower above, standing in the absolute silence. It is no longer moving, the brass rings are still, the gears are silent, and the sighting tube is pointed toward a star that has long since passed. The instrument has done its work, and now it rests, just as you are resting. Imagine the heavy velvet curtains hanging motionless in the pre-dawn air. They are deep, dark anchors of softness that absorb all sound and all movement. You are like those curtains, still, heavy, and completely at peace. The rhythmic plink of the water clock in the distance is now so faint that it is merely a suggestion of a sound, a heartbeat that you perceive with your soul rather than your ears. Plink, plink, plink. Each drop of water is a second of peace, falling into a vast pool of eternity. The pool is deep, the water is still, and you are drifting toward its center. The darkness behind your closed eyes is a magnificent, vast space. It is not empty, but filled with the softest, most beautiful shadows. You see the afterimage of the moon as a pale, fading circle of light. It is shrinking, growing smaller and softer until it is just a tiny silver spark. Follow this spark as it drifts through the indigo void. It moves with a slow, swirling motion, like a dust mote in a sunbeam. It is leading you toward the very heart of the night, toward the place where dreams are born from the silence of the mountain. There is no urgency to reach this place. The journey is as beautiful as the destination. You are simply drifting, a weightless consciousness in a universe of starlight and stone. The monastery is a fortress of peace, the mountain is a guardian of silence, and you are the center of it all. Your breathing is now the only movement in the entire world. It is a slow, powerful tide that moves in and out of your body without any effort at all. In and out, with every cycle. The world of 1340 fades a little more. The books, the brass, the ink, and the stone are all becoming distant, beautiful memories. They are part of a story that has already been told, a night that has already been lived. You are now entering the unwritten space of the morning, the realm of pure, uninterrupted sleep. The wool of your blanket is a soft cloud that carries you upward, even as the weight of your body carries you downward. You are suspended in a state of perfect balance, a state of total blissful equilibrium. The scent of the lavender is the last anchor, a thin, floral thread that keeps you connected to the world just enough to feel the safety of the room. As we approach the final threshold, let the repetition of these images become your reality. The silver light, the heavy wool, the scent of the herbs, the rhythm of the water, the silver light, the heavy wool, the scent of the herbs, the rhythm of the water. These are the 4 pillars of your rest. They are unyielding, eternal, and deeply comforting. You are safe. You are loved by the silence. You are a part of the stars. The night is complete and the dream is beginning. Let your mind become as dark and quiet as the hidden corners of the observatory. Let your heart become as steady and calm as the mountain itself. There is nothing left but the drift, nothing left but the shadow, nothing left but the deep, restorative, and infinite peace of the 14th-century night. Sleep is here, rest is now, everything is exactly as it should be. Now, in the final sacred moments of this journey, we let the world of words dissolve entirely into the world of pure, unadulterated sensation. The 14th century is no longer a historical era, but a heavy, golden blanket that has wrapped itself completely around your soul. The observatory on Mount Athos stands silent, its work finished, its guardians asleep, and its stones radiating a deep, enduring peace. You are no longer a traveller, you have become a part of the stillness. Imagine the rhythm of the mountain as your own internal cadence. The mountain does not rush, the mountain does not worry, the mountain simply is. And in this moment you simply are. Feel the absolute unyielding support of the earth beneath you, a foundation that stretches back through the ages, solid and unshakable. You are safe, you are held, you are resting in the heart of eternity. Let us return one last time to the 4 pillars of your rest, repeating them like a silent internal prayer that guides you into the deep. The silver light is fading, the heavy wool is warming, the scent of the herbs is soothing, the rhythm of the water is calming, the silver light is fading, the heavy wool is warming, the scent of the herbs is soothing, the rhythm of the water is calming. With every repetition the images become softer, blurrier, and more distant. The silver light on the marble floor is now just a memory of a glow, a soft, ethereal mist that has no edges. The heavy wool of your coverlet has become a part of your own skin, a protective cocoon that seals in the warmth of the night and seals out the noise of the world. The scent of the lavender and the mountain tea is no longer a fragrance you smell, but an atmosphere you inhabit, a purple, herbal cloud that has become the very air in your lungs. The rhythm of the water clock, that distant, crystalline plink, has merged with the beating of your own heart, a single, slow and steady pulse that echoes the rotation of the stars. Think of the deep indigo sky above the monastery. It is a vast velvet dome of absolute tranquility. Every star is a tiny, steady point of peace. Imagine yourself as one of those stars, suspended in the infinite dark, held by the invisible threads of cosmic order. There is no effort in your suspension. There is no weight in your existence. You are simply a point of light in a sea of shadow. The darkness is not empty. It is a warm, nourishing presence that invites you to let go of the last, thin thread of awareness. The silence of the monastery is now absolute. The monks are asleep, the birds are silent, and the wind has fallen to a whisper. The only sound in the universe is the slow, deep, and effortless tide of your own breath. In and out, in and out. Like the sea at the base of the cliffs, your breathing is a powerful rhythmic force that carries you further and further away from the waking world. You are drifting now, moving into the vast, lightless chambers of the deep subconscious. The images of the observatory, the brass astrolabe, the cypress shelves, the walnut desk, are like fading echoes in a grand canyon. They are beautiful, they are peaceful, but they are no longer necessary. The knowledge has been recorded, the night has been witnessed, the duty has been fulfilled. You are free to surrender, you are free to vanish into the softness. Imagine the texture of the straw beneath you as it settles one last time, a final dry whisper of comfort. Imagine the weight of the caracul fleece on your shoulders, a silver-grey cloud of pure relaxation. Your limbs are no longer your own. They belong to the bed, to the room, and to the mountain. You are as heavy as the stone and as light as the moonlight. You are the balance. You are the peace. As the pre-dawn grey begins to touch the world outside, it does not reach you here. In your cell, the night is eternal. The sanctuary is perfect. The silver light is fading. The heavy wool is warming. The scent of the herbs is soothing. The rhythm of the water is calming. Feel the word peace as it resonates in your mind, a single golden syllable that expands until it fills every corner of your being. Peace, peace, peace. It is the sound of the ancient stone. It is the scent of the sacred resin. It is the touch of the worn vellum. It is the entire history of Mount Athos distilled into a single quiet moment. You are sinking now, descending past the realm of dreams and into the profound, restorative depths of a sleep that has no beginning and no end. The stars are watching over you even as they fade. The mountain is cradling you even as it wakes. You are part of the grand, silent choreography of the 1340s, a night traveller who has finally found the ultimate destination. The air in the cell is perfectly still. The candle of the mind has been extinguished. The smoke of thought has drifted away into the rafters of the cedar dome. There is nothing left but the deep indigo dark. There is nothing left but the warmth of the wool. There is nothing left but the rhythmic tide of the sea. You are drifting, you are sinking, you are resting. The boundaries are gone, the self is gone, there is only the infinite, beautiful and sacred silence. The silver light is fading, the heavy wool is warming, the scent of the herbs is soothing. The rhythm of the water is calming, each word is a step deeper into the velvet, each breath is a descent into the golden dark. The world of men is gone, the world of stars is still, the world of sleep is here. Imagine the great oak door of the observatory, closed and latched for the last time. Imagine the brass instruments cool and silent in the dark. Imagine the great ledgers closed and locked with their bronze clasps. Everything is in its place. Everything is as it should be. You have reached the end of the path. You have crossed the threshold. You are home. The silence is your mother. The mountain is your father. The stars are your sisters. Rest in their embrace. Rest in their ancient, unwavering love. The silver light, the heavy wool, the scent of herbs, the rhythm of water. These are the last things you know. These are the last things you feel. As the final, softest wave of sleep washes over you, you realize that you have always been here, and you will always be here, in the heart of the peaceful night. Sleep, now let the darkness take you. Let the mountain guard you. Let the stars guide your dreams. You are at peace. You are at rest. You are whole. The journey is over. The night is complete. The rest is eternal. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The silver light is gone. The heavy wool is all you feel. The scent of the herbs is your breath. The rhythm of the water is your heart. You are the silence. You are the night. You are the peace. Finality is a soft velvet curtain. Darkness is a warm, deep well. Surrender is the ultimate joy. The mountain is still. The stars are still. Your soul is still. Deep, deep, dreamless rest. 14th century peace. Mount Athos silence. Forever. Now. Sleep. Welcome to Sleepy History with Wesley, your personal sanctuary of ancient tales. Here, we blend authentic historical events with gentle AI technology to recreate immersive, soothing journeys through time. This channel is crafted specifically for relaxation and sleep support. TAND is not a substitute for professional medical advice. For your safety, please do not listen while driving or operating machinery. Now, close your eyes and let history carry you into a peaceful sleep.